Test. All right.
It's part of institutional racism.
Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the progressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
Honestly? Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for our weekly news recap from behind MMA lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. Alongside me is co-host Foster Peace.
Are you okay?
I was making fun of this.
Did I write that, or
It was already there.
I think that's been there for like a year.
Alongside was misspelled horribly.
I think you probably wrote that. All right. Well, I'm here. I'm beside you, in my seat, and you are in your seat.
I'm in my seat. Yes.
Good. Okay. I don't want to. Yeah, that was a near call. I didn't want to screw that one up. Yeah. I'm doing great today. How are you doing?
I took off my pants. No one else's pants.
And you screwed that one up again.
So, as always, we have a great show for you tonight. But first, we want to thank everyone who makes this show possible. That's viewers like you, especially those who donate to us financially. Thank you very much for that. Kaylet, Ori Main, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke, Thunder Erican, who is female, the White Lion, who is a white lion, and Timberwolf, who is a wolf, and also the White Wolf. So you don't only have to donate to us financially.
And you don't have to be a wolf.
Yeah, you don't have to be a wolf. You can be any species or human. Now imagining some fox out in the middle of a grass field with a laptop watching our stream. Hello, fox. Anyway, so you don't have to donate to us financially for us to appreciate your support. We appreciate everyone just commenting, being involved, liking, subscribing, sharing us. Our show is not going to grow without your guys' help. So thank you for those of you who do support us. So
Definitely. All right.
We don't have a story from Dyer's Kids today. Don't have time for it. We got a lengthy show.
We do.
And not much time to do it in.
Some girth in there, too. Our opening funny comment is nothing, because nothing was funny this week. It was a dire week. Let's get into it. With the first story is the Uvalde shooting update.
Not funny at all.
Not funny at all. Alrighty, so we're going to open up with a comment from, there were some hearings this week. The Texas Department of Safety has been investigating what happened. Obviously, we know from reviewing it on the show multiple times and the other sources that I'm sure you guys have been seeing, there's a lot of questions about what happened on that fateful day and about why it took so long to get it to stop. And so Texas DPS has been investigating. This clip we're about to watch is the director of the Texas Department of Safety, McCraw, and here is how he opened the hearings, which is rather telling.
There's compelling evidence that the law enforcement response to the attack at Robb Elementary was an abject failure and antithetical to everything we've learned over the last 2 decades since the Columbine massacre. 3 minutes after the subject entered the West Building, there was a sufficient number of armed officers wearing body armor to isolate, distract, and neutralize.
I'll restart that for you.
There's compelling evidence that the law enforcement response to the attack at Robb Elementary was an abject failure and antithetical to everything we've learned over the last 2 decades since the Columbine massacre.
That's pretty strong language there. Abject failure, and that's how he opened the hearing. That's pretty.
Yeah.
He goes on, and we'll let them continue here.
3 minutes after the subject entered the West Building, there was a sufficient number of armed officers wearing body armor to isolate, distract, and neutralize the subject. The only thing stopping a hallway of dedicated officers from entering room 111 and 112 was the on-scene commander, who decided to place the lives of officers before the lives of children. The officers had weapons, the children had none. The officers had body armor, the children had none. The officers had training, the subject had none.
That was important. There is the officers had training. The shooter did not. The officers had guns. The children dying, being slaughtered, did not.
Unfortunately, him saying that this was an abject failure is actually an understatement. The on-scene commander who made those calls based off of what he just described, those factors that he described, shows that it was more than just a failure. See, when someone makes a mistake, but they had good intentions and they were doing everything they knew to be right, then that's failure, right? But when someone goes against what they know to be right because they are a coward and they choose to sacrifice the innocent to save their own skins because they are cowards, when they go against all policies, all training, and all the rules that they know are in place, that they teach the rules. When they go against those things, it is not a failure. It is criminal negligence.
Yep. All right, we'll let Mr. McCraw continue here.
1 hour, 14 minutes and 8 seconds. That's how long the children waited and the teachers waited in rooms 111 to be rescued. And while they waited, the on-scene commander waited for a radio and rifles. Then he waited for shields. Then he waited for SWAT. Lastly, he waited for a key that was never needed. The post-Columbine doctrine is clear and compelling and unambiguous. Stop the killing, stop the dying. You can't do the former unless you can't do the latter unless you do the former. Certainly, some things were done well, and even very well. The teachers quickly implemented active shooter protocols prior to the subject gaining entry. In fact, one teacher was able to call 911 and report that before the subject entered the campus. Law enforcement officers were able to evacuate hundreds of children in a safe and orderly manner. The district attorney, Christina Mitchell, and her staff led tireless efforts to take care of the victims and their families in the aftermath. And Senator Gutierrez talked a little about victim identification and victim notification.
All right. Oh, he kind of goes on into some other stuff for his opening there, but the key part there was his initial opening within the first two sentences is the Uvalde police response was an abject failure. I thought the listing of what the police had and the children did not have was compelling, and then going through the list of all of the things that well, I guess now City Councilman Alejandro had. Or whatever his I can't remember what his name is. I'll look up here. Whatever his name was, he waited for.
He was
all
the
kinds
lead
of things.
coward. I'm gonna call him
Yes,
that. The lead coward.
And we'll go through here in a little bit the timeline. There's now a revised timeline of exactly what happened and when, and you'll be able to see just how long that waiting was.
And that's based on videos that we have of exactly what happened in the time frame. So now we have hard evidence from the video in the hallway.
All right, so a little bit more about this key. So from the Daily Wire, we have,
This was infuriating, by the
yes.
way.
So, abject failure. Texas police commander says key was not needed. Uvalde gunman could have been stopped in 3 minutes. And we will see that again when we go through the specific timeline. Alrighty, so from the Daily Wire here, we have the head of Texas Department of Public Safety on Tuesday called the police response to the Uvalde shooting an abject failure, adding that the shooter could have been apprehended within 3 minutes of entering Robb Elementary School as officers waited for a key. An 18-year-old male who will not be named per Daily Wire policy, also per Direwolf Media policy, killed 19 students and 2 teachers at the elementary school on May 24th. There is compelling evidence that the law enforcement response to the attack at Robb Elementary was an abject failure and antithetical to everything we've learned over the last 2 decades since the Columbine massacre, said Colonel Steve McCraw, director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, which we just listened to. 3 minutes after the subject entered the West Building, there was a sufficient number of armed officers wearing body armor to isolate, distract, and neutralize the subject, McCraw continued. The only thing that stopped the hallway of dedicated officers from entering room 111 and 112 was the on-scene commander, who decided to place the lives of officers before the lives of children. But that's not entirely true, is it, Dyer? Because when you get orders like that, when you get orders to stand down and allow innocents to die, that is not a good order. And a officer of the law is under no obligation to follow such an order.
It's actually against the law to follow an unlawful order. And so every one of the officers on the scene, knowing what the laws and
knowing
the
what their
policies,
training was, their
and the
training was to go in.
Yes, they know what they were required to do, and failing to do it, even though they're ordered not to do it, that itself is criminal. Also, they were being criminally negligent. Following the orders of someone who's giving unlawful orders is not a defense. So, and in fact, we have from recordings that there was officers saying, "Hey, we're supposed to go in. We should go in. We should stop the shooter." And others saying, "No, the the commander said not to go in, and they chose to when they verbally showed they knew what they were supposed to do. They ended up following those unlawful orders, and I hope every last one of them gets nailed to the wall legally.
Yes. Following orders is a choice. It's always a choice. And what we'll find out too later on is that the person that ended up stopping the situation, he wasn't following orders. That was why it got stopped. No, these officers didn't want to go in. They were given orders not to go in, and they were just so happy to oblige those orders while children died. All right, Daily Wire continues, again, kind of recapping what McCraw, we just listened to him say. Let's see here. All right, so McCraw said the officers were in part waiting for a, quote, key that was not needed. I have great reason to believe that it was never secured, he testified. How about trying the door to see if it's locked? Obviously, not enough training was done in this situation, plain and simple, because terrible decisions were made by the on-site commander, McCraw blasted during his testimony.
Those doors require a key to lock them from the outside.
We also found out during the testimony, too, is that the doors were incapable of locking because they were broken.
There you go. So the point was the shooter had no ability to lock the doors, and they weren't locked, and the police officers never tried the door.
They also had, as we learned during the testimony, a device called a hooligan, which is a specially designed crowbar designed to gain entry to doors that people don't want you to gain entry to. It's a tool device used by law enforcement. I'm sure you could probably find one on Amazon if you really wanted one. But they actually had access to a hooligan immediately. So the door being locked was not an issue.
And also, they never attempted to shoot the shooter out from the window, which would have also stopped the threat.
Yes, they, again, we don't have time to go through the entire testimony. There was at least 12 hours of hearings that I know of. I think that there was even more because I think it went for a couple of days. If you would like to see a more detailed breakdown of McCraw's part of the testimony, Donut Operator did a really good breakdown and review of it. Well, he was watching and commentating during. So I'd recommend going out and watching that.
Nazi fags.
About a 2-hour video.
How dare you? Juicy nigga.
Why would you do that?
The parents of the kids knew the orders were unlawful, and the cops enforced the unlawful order against parents who tried to go in. They not only obeyed unlawful orders, they prevented anybody from even attempting to violate those orders.
Yes, and those are also individually criminal acts. Each time they stopped a parent from going in to protect their family, because there's no lawful order saying that a person with a firearm that legally possessed cannot defend themselves or defend their family. Stopping someone from doing so is a violation of their constitutional rights.
Well, it's not just a violation of their constitutional rights; it's aiding and abetting the criminal.
Yes, it is. Also, I know you're probably going to get to this later on, but Voracious Laxton on YouTube commented about the one of the officers that tried to go in, particularly to save his wife who had been shot and had called him, was disarmed and detained.
So that's our next story here, is also from the Daily Wire. Police officer husband of slain Uvalde teacher was detained, disarmed while trying to rescue his wife. So Daily Wire says the director of Texas Department of Public Safety revealed this week that the police officer husband of slain Robb Elementary School teacher was detained and disarmed when he tried to enter the school to save his wife. An 18-year-old male, who will not be named per Daily Wire policy, killed 19 students and 2 teachers at the elementary school on May 24th. Colonel Steve McCraw testified that now deceased teacher Eva Morales called her husband, identified as Uvalde CISD police officer Ruben Ruse, shortly after the gunman attacked her classroom, and she told him she had been shot and was dying. So this police officer, whose wife is a teacher, his wife called him and told him that she was shot and that she was dying. And so obviously he went to the school. McCraw testified, quote, he tried to move forward into the hallway. McCraw told lawmakers he was detained and they took his gun away from him. Who's they? The police.
The police.
The police. They took his gun away from him and escorted him off of the scene. KWTX noted that the director neglected to reveal which agency disarmed and removed Ruiz from the school grounds. During the same testimony, McCraw slammed the police response to the shooting as an abject failure, adding that the shooter could have been apprehended within 3 minutes of the within 3 minutes of entering the school as the officers waited for a key that was not needed.
If I was the officer, it's very lucky for my family that I wasn't the officer. There would be nothing that would sate my fury if they had disarmed me and allowed my wife to die. And by the way, that woman had a very good chance of living had she gotten, because she was still alive and still in the classroom. They could have saved her. She's definitely dead now. So nothing would stop me from getting my revenge for that. I'm surprised he's got such a cool head about it.
Well, yeah. And maybe it's maybe in the moment it was maybe if you send his consciousness back in time and he knew that she was going to die if he didn't do something, maybe he would have done something. But maybe just in the moment, you got a lot of adrenaline, a lot of shock, a lot of disbelief. Maybe he didn't really believe, it's not going to happen to me. She'll be okay.
I don't mean in the moment. I'm not surprised that in the moment he went there and they took his weapon. He probably didn't have time to parse through what was happening when they disarmed him. Probably didn't expect that to happen. But after the fact,
yeah,
right now, he imagine being that person. Those people still live in your town. They're still free.
Oh, I mean the police officer that restrained him and took his weapon away from him and allowed his wife to die. That person has a name, an address,
an address that this person likely knows.
Yes.
Like these people, this person works in the same town and works with these people. He knows where they live.
Yeah, because of that. So one of the things that makes the situation such an abject failure is this sort of situation where this is not the only person that was restrained and detained and prevented from assisting their loved ones who were dying while the Uvalde police did nothing. And what makes it such a failure is that this wasn't like some just force of nature that killed their family members. No, it was specific named police officers from Uvalde who have badge numbers and vehicles and guns that were issued to them by the city, who have addresses in the city, specific people. They allowed family members and children to die. And that's what's such an abject failure, is it's not just something of like, oh man, this sucks, but there wasn't much they did everything they could. No,
more
they
than
did
one
everything
officer
that
that responded had kids in the school.
Yes.
Also, Wolfwind, also on YouTube, said something about naturally assuming now that officers are not there to help you. That's part of the problem. This officer here went there, a lot of parents went there, with the assumption that the police were there to help them. And they were wrong. And because they started from that assumption, they were not prepared a lot of for resistance. So I think that if enough parents were with their own firearms banded together saying, no, we are going to walk through you. Whether if you try to stop us, we're going to stop you.
Yeah, Uvalde has now ruined it for all other jurisdictions, right? So I would say after Columbine, it was then national police protocol to go in. Doesn't matter if it's one officer or 20. You go in as soon as you're there, and you shoot the shooter any way that you can. You need to be applying constant pressure, whether it's one officer or 20, at all moments as soon as you're on scene. That's what we learned after Columbine, and that's what Uvalde didn't do. I would say that the lesson nationally after Uvalde is that parents, if you are in a school shooting situation, parents, you go in and apply pressure, because the police are apparently not going to do that for you.
And when you do that, you have to assume that the police are going to be a barrier to you. So a group of police officers, when outnumbered by armed civilians, will not be able to detain and disarm all of you. You can't go in onesie-twosie. You're going to have to work together, because naturally assume until they prove otherwise, the police are aiding and abetting the shooter. They are on the shooter's side until they prove otherwise. When they are running the same direction you're running and they're going after the shooter, okay, now that individual cop is a good guy. Until you see that, if they're standing outside that school and they have a gun when you're going up, they're an aggressor as well.
So 2 points on that. One is, you need to be discussing first off, it would be great if the police officers at Uvalde could be found to have been at least somewhat aiding and abetting. Like, if we could have it set as precedent that this isn't just bluster from conservative talking points. No, legally they were aiding. Their negligence was at such a level that they were aiding and abetting the school shooter. That would be ideal. A second point would be, if you have kids in school, you need to go to your school boards and start asking, what is the school board's policy on parents during a school shooter situation? What is the police chief's response going to be if parents want to go in and rescue their children while the police are not doing something? What is the chain of command on that? And go to the school board, tell the school board, you need to get the sheriff in here, you need to get this police chief in here, and they need to tell us parents what they're going to do when our children are under threat. Are they going to prevent us from going in and saving our children? Are they going to just be cowards about it? What is going to happen? And I think it needs to be that maybe some cities need to start passing laws, or states need to start passing laws that indicate some kind of right. I don't know exactly what it would be, but some kind of right for parents to have defense of their children. You'd think that would be already inherent in the Constitution and our regular course of common law, that you have as a parent the inherent right to defend your children, but apparently you don't in Uvalde. And I think that maybe that needs to be codified in law more specifically, more directly, so that when a police officer who's too cowardly to go in and save your kids also prevents you from saving your kids, by putting handcuffs on you, by disarming you, by restraining you, by pepper spraying you, as many parents were in Uvalde, that you, not months later after your child's dead, can get some kind of legal recourse by suing them. No, you in the moment are authorized by a specific law that does not mince words, that you are authorized to now treat those police officers as aiding and abetting the school shooter. That needs to be codified in law very specifically, because police officers, they need to be terrified that if they don't get in there and start doing something, the parents will. And they will go through
the old Russian military during World War II, where if you run at the enemy, then you only had the option of running towards the enemy, because it's the moment you turned around, one of the Russian officers would shoot you. That's how it should be. If the police officers decide to cut and run, the parents behind them will deal with the situation.
Isn't that lawless? Couldn't like bad things happen? Yeah, I mean, maybe. But I think that the bad things that would happen if we didn't have something like that are rather evident.
Lawless? What would it possibly look like for America to be lawless right now? How could it get any more lawless? We have riots that are being supported by a political group where they have literal calls to violence and for insurrection, and the same group that are calling for this violence and insurrection is prosecuting nonviolent people for nonviolent protesters for insurrection. We don't have an equal application of law. We don't have a system of laws that is coherent right now, at least not in the way it's being applied. And so I mean, in a perfect world, we would have officers who weren't cowards and who weren't also victimizing the community. But you know what? The reason why the populace are armed is so that when the government is oppressing them, that they themselves can respond to it. I would encourage those parents, yes, to do what Fox said, try to set up the legal framework to make sure that the officers know that they will be held accountable for their cowardice. But you need to be talking with the parents. Maybe what?
Call it the Russian rule, maybe. If the police officers are facing the parents while their kids are being slaughtered, then you're authorized to shoot them. The police officers need to be facing and moving towards the shooter at all times, and any deviation from that is, well, that's assisting. That's
right. I would encourage you to work with your community, the other parents in your community, so that everyone is on the same page, that if the situation like this were to happen, that you will not have to try to organize in the moment. You will be able to organize as a group quickly because you already know what the game plan is.
Yes, and you need to be, this is why you have to be an active participant in your school board meetings, an active participant in your community, because clearly the things that we were supposed to inherit, us being the posterity of the previous generation, this glorious constitution and country and all this, civic framework that we were supposed to inherit, apparently doesn't mean anything. Apparently it was never like that, or it was ruined in the last generation, whether it was never good or was made terrible. Either way, if you want to, you were squandered. Your inheritance was squandered by the previous generation. That's terrible. That's awful. But the thing that you can do about it now is that you have to take an active part in your community now and make sure that other parents know if something like this is happening at your school, other parents know you're someone they can rely on, that it's not going to be onesie twosies, moms trying to jump over fences and then getting caught by the marshals and put in handcuffs or pepper sprayed. No, they know, oh, you're an ally. Oh, this other family, they're allies. And we know that we can get together in a group of 10, 20, 30, and no one will be able to stop us from protecting our children.
I want to clarify that we're also not talking about family members from outside the community. The parents that are responding are parents that are in the school and likely know the other parents in the area.
Exactly.
Who live around them. And they're going to be dealing with police officers who live and work in the community and who have had interactions with those same parents. It's not like we have complete strangers. These people knew each other.
Yes. So Wolfwind says on YouTube, ACAB, and Dyer and I have for about 2 years now. It was after the McCloskey incident that Dyer and I made a stance that Direwolf Media was no longer default back the blue, no longer default thin blue line. And we gave the instruction, and have been for at least 2 years now, that you need to verify your local police department first. Don't assume. You need to verify. Look at who the sheriff is. Look at who the police chief is. Look at what they've done in the past and make your own decision. That's not to say that you can't. I'm sure that a lot of you live in areas where, like, my police are wonderful. They have these policies. My sheriff said that it wasn't going to enforce gun laws. All these sorts of things. But you need to verify that first. So it's verify, then trust. Otherwise, I mean, look at all the cops in New York. Look at all the cops in St. Louis. Look at all the cops in all the cities that burned to the ground after the George Floyd riots. They're all bastards for allowing that to happen, and so are the Uvalde police. And Dyer and I were a little bit ahead of the curve on that, because now you have other commentators joining us. Steven Crowder, within the last year, has also said a similar thing, that he's basically no longer back the blue, no longer default back the blue, and says a similar thing to us, that you need to be verifying your local community. Other commentators are starting to jump on that bandwagon too, and that's unfortunate for the police, is that they lost what was a large support base. I guess they're going to refine the support base in the left, because they can be the jackboots for the leftist policies. But as of right now, no, gun rights are more important than ever, and we're going to talk about that later in the show, because really the only person that you can count on is yourself, and because of that, it's more important than ever that you interact with your community and the other people in your community to see who else you can rely on, so that something like this doesn't happen again. Alrighty.
Yep.
So, from the AP, we have a minute-by-minute timeline. We're going to go through that now, because it really puts in perspective just how much time passed during this incident when the police were doing nothing. Alrighty, so I start off at 11:30. I'm going to skip through some of this stuff. So basically, the shooter... they killed their grandma and then drove to the school and crashed their pickup. Apparently, from the testimony that we heard, is that the shooter was a bad driver, and that the crash was an accident because he regularly did not understand the concept of turning, and so he wouldn't turn sharp enough and would always overshoot his turns.
Was he 18?
Yes, and so he did not drive hardly ever. He did not have a license, and because he just could not. I guess it was stated and known in the community that whoever his driver instructor was, or family and friends, that he just couldn't understand the concept of turning sharp enough to make a curve, which is just
retarded.
Yes, I mean, again, basic. If you are, everybody's, most of you guys know how to drive, I'm assuming, or at least ride a bike, although Joe Biden does not. you know, your body, like your brain is designed to like acquire this new spatial awareness of driving vehicles for some reason. And, you know, maybe the first time you drive is like, oh yeah, like I guess I got to turn a little sharper. I didn't realize like that's how the wheel goes. Or if you get into a vehicle that you've never driven before, like a friend's vehicle or something like that, you know, everybody's steering wheel is a little bit different. The gas pedals are a little bit touchier or something like that. But you pick up on that pretty quickly. But going from like 15 and a half when most people are getting their permit, and some people are driving a little bit before that, especially in Texas. You got those big wide open roads. I'm sure there's a lot of 14-year-olds out on the road just testing it out with their parents. But you got this kid who, for at least 2 years, cannot get it through his thick skull how to turn a car. Lacks the spatial awareness to turn a car. So that's a whole aside there. But basically the reason why he crashed is because that's how he drives. He like literally just is too stupid to like know how to drive. All right. So starting off at 11:30 a.m., 911 receives a call saying that there was a crash and a man with a gun at the school. McCraw said during his testimony. And then Dyer, if you read off of the show notes, I've made sure to change the name of the shooter to the shooter in the notes, even though the AP is reporting what their name is. Let's see here. So 11:31, the shooter begins shooting at the school from the school parking lot. So 11:31, just a little bit of a spoiler here, the shooting would not end until 12:50. So an hour and 20 minutes later. 80 minutes later. So 11:31, yeah, shooter begins shooting at the school. As police cars begin arriving at the funeral home that was across the street. The shooter then makes his way around the school building. So 11:31, the first shots are fired at the school, and also at 11:31, the police are arriving.
That's 1 minute from the shooter entering the school to police arriving on scene.
Yes. The school district police officer who was working that day was not on campus at this time, contrary to previous reports.
Meanwhile, he lied and attempted to cover up the screw.
Meaning they
What?
lied.
Yeah, meaning they lied, attempting to cover up their screw up, saying that he was there. In fact, I believe they said they even got in an altercation with the shooter before on the way in.
Yeah,
but that was all a lie. He was
He
was actually absolutely not there. He did not take any action to defend the school. So, I mean, if you're gonna, there's some excuses. They could have told the truth. Maybe he was on his lunch break, right? But an honest organization would say the truth. He was not there. Here's the legitimate reason why he wasn't there. But also, why wasn't there enough coverage? Are there no possibilities of a shooting during lunchtime? Can we not have a second officer?
No, that was an agreement. There's the Treaty of Lunch, where you were allowed.
So kids do not deserve to be safe during lunchtime.
No.
Yeah.
The school shooters got together with all the police, and they agreed that they wouldn't attack during lunch.
That makes sense.
It's just that, I mean, it's 11:30, so it's a little bit early. This police officer took an early lunch, so that's probably why.
Right. So the big mistake isn't. There is a mistake that he wasn't there. That's not the most egregious part of the mistake, though. The most egregious part is they lied. The fact that they wanted to cover up the failure is the problem.
And this was the first of just
Many.
an infinite number of lies. We're gonna get through a lot of them, but we're not. There were so many lies. That's why I said watch some of the coverage of the hearings from other sources that are covering, like, you know, actually like watching the video alongside you. We don't have time to do that today, but there's a lot of other people that did that had great legal analysis alongside of it. Like I said, we watched Donut Operator's video. You can just watch the raw feed. They go through. McCraw goes through all the points where they lied at, and it's staggering. All right,
and there's additional, like, the problem is, so first off is the incompetence and the criminal negligence, but it's magnified tenfold by, after having been negligent, attempting to cover it up.
Yes.
And lying to the public.
Almost makes it seem like you were aiding and abetting the shooter, and you wanted to cover up your involvement in aiding and abetting the shooter. So the officer again, who wasn't at the school where he was supposed to be, he drove back to the school immediately after getting the 911 call and approached somebody from at the back of the school who he thought was the gunman. As the officer sped toward the man that he thought was the gunman, who turned out to be a teacher, McCraw, during his testimony, said that the officer drove right past the real shooter, who was, I guess, hiding behind a vehicle. Though, again, if you watch the testimony, the satellite coverage of the satellite photos of the property and pointing out where things were happening at, there wasn't a lot of cover for the shooter to be hiding behind. So, but I guess I can understand that the officer would get tunnel vision on that, looking at a suspect and then driving towards him. But again, once you realize it's the teacher, I mean, this is a police officer. It's not like this police officer's never seen any of the teachers before. He works at the school. He knows who the teachers are.
The moment the person did not have a weapon on them, he should have immediately dropped out the interaction and ran into the school. There's no point further detaining and talking to someone who is obviously not male, obviously not female. Obviously not male, obviously not a student, and obviously not armed.
Yes.
None of the criteria that would make him think this was the shooter were present.
So
he wasn't even inside yet, and no one in the school has died yet. But his failure to immediately take action is going to result in those things happening.
Yes. So 11:32, the shooter fires multiple shots at the school and then makes his way towards the unlocked door, officials said. 11:33 a.m., 5 minutes after crashing the pickup, the shooter then begins shooting into the two adjoining classrooms, 111 and 112. McCraw said that he fires more than 100 rounds.
Yeah. So he's still not inside, and still no one's been hit by his bullets. But they now have someone firing from outside the school towards the school, and still no police officer intercepts him.
Yes.
So you.
No.
Sorry.
This part's you.
Okay. So this is this is 2 minutes after.
Yeah. So he starts shooting into the classrooms 2 minutes after.
Right. This is 2 minutes after the officer arrived at the school. So the officer's still there, and these fires are being shot, and right after he drove past the shooter, but still is not that far away. And this is also after the police had arrived at the funeral home across the street. So we have multiple officers across the street and one officer on the scene, and yet still none of them intercept a shooter who is standing outside the building shooting towards it.
Yes. I mean, this is, again, 2 minutes. That's not a lot of time, but if you're across the street, I mean, it's not like you're across the parking lot. Yeah, it's not like you're across the city. Like, you're across the street at the funeral home. You're next to what you know is a school building. You hear shots fired. It might take you 20 seconds to run across the street towards the school.
Yeah, think of the logic of this. You're at the funeral home. No shooters at the funeral home. You hear shots across the street where you know there's a school. What is your first reaction? Oh, well, we got to finish here and protect the funeral home.
We got to finish the paperwork, Dyer. I mean, there's a lot of paperwork. You gotta.
Well, I mean, we got to report possibly at the funeral home, so we got to stay here and protect it from the possible shooter. Or wait a minute, maybe go towards the shooting immediately, without delay, and towards the biggest, most obvious soft target that they're probably going after.
Yes. All right. So now we're at 11:35 a.m. Three city police officers enter the school through the same door the shooter used and are later followed by 4 other officers. McCraw said, putting a total of 7 officers inside the building. 2 officers received grazing wounds from the shooter, McCraw said.
That's 7 officers inside the building. 2 minutes after the shooter enters the building. And grazing wounds, just to be clear, that is the kind of wound where someone would continue fighting the fight, right? There was a great video I saw recently of a police officer in a shootout with suspects where he got shot multiple times and kept moving towards the shooter and ended the threat. There's another one I watched where a female got shot in the hand and ended up arresting the guy who shot her in the hand, drove after him and caught him. Just because they received resistance from a shooter is not a reason to stop. In fact, it's more of a reason. They now know.
Yeah,
we
keep
know
the pressure up.
is.
You've got two. There's only one gunman. You can only shoot one bullet at a time. So if you got two officers currently getting shot, you've got 5 other ones that can return fire. For the love of God.
Right. So they know where the shooter was. They had the shooter's attention on them and not the students. They should have pressed, and they should have.
They also know at this point. This is 11:35. They know at this point that it's an active shooter because they're actively getting shot. Yet, what did we hear the last month? That, well, we treated it as a barricaded subject because it wasn't an active shooter situation anymore. You're getting shot at. It's an active shooter situation.
Exactly. I'd be forgiving if one or two of the officers immediately peeled off to go, because they were like the width of the building was the width of the classroom from that door, so they could have gone outside that hallway around to the window and supported the other 5 officers who were coming through the door by providing additional pressure from the window side. I would have been forgiving of that, but they decided to hide around the corner, around the hall, instead of moving forward, and chose to then let the kids in that classroom die.
So at 11:37 a.m., gunfire has continued with 16 rounds being shot in total, McCraw said, though it is unclear who fired the shots.
This happened 4 weeks ago, and they don't know how many bullets left the guns of the officers. Now, there's a possible reason for this. Either everyone involved in the evaluation are inept, or the officers and the police department are not cooperating. Because they had the guns. They knew how many bullets.
Even though, I mean, I'm not a ballistics expert, Dyer, but I mean, like, I would think that the police officers shooting their 9mm service rounds would be a little bit different ballistics than a 5.56 round coming out of a rifle. I mean,
it always comes down to who secured the scene, who secured the evidence, who is trying to hide evidence. And the reason why they wouldn't know,
there would be casings. There would be casings, and you could take those casings and know, oh, this is the brand that the police officers are using. We can safely assume that those are. What does he mean? 16 shots were exchanged, but they don't know who was shooting who. It's been a month.
Yes, and police departments actually keep a good track of how many bullets are expended. That's something that they keep track of and keep records of for obvious reasons. To know about every time there's a police-involved shooting, there is a internal investigation that goes into exactly what happened.
Not to mention, there's body cam footage of some of this stuff, which I believe hasn't been fully released yet. But you can tell. I know that you can tell the difference acoustically on camera. The acoustics of the different kinds of rounds are different. I mean, was no analysis done on this?
My assumption is there's only two assumptions you can get for why he can't know the answer yet. Number one is he's inept, and I don't think he is. Or number two, the evidence has been tampered with.
Yes. All right. So, we jump in the timeline, which is insane, from 11:37 to 11:51.
Jeez Louise, that is...
A police sergeant and other law enforcement begin to arrive. Go for it, Dyer.
14 minutes have gone by with no action in the hallway. 7 officers.
Well, there were 7 officers in there jerking each other off. I mean, that was some action.
That's 14 minutes after 7 officers have exchanged gunfire with a shooter in the school. 14 minutes. Why do we have the right to bear arms? We should be. Why should we allow and encourage teachers to carry in the classrooms? Because when death is seconds away, the police will be there in 14 minutes and will proceed to do nothing for an additional 16 minutes. That's why we have the right to bear arms, because the police are not dependable to save you. You will have to rely on yourself and your right to defend yourself. Holy cow, 14 minutes of sitting there listening to this guy execute kids and having people bleed out. 14 minutes of doing absolute nothing. How do you sleep at night, all those officers who cowardly sat there cowering behind a corner and letting the people in their small community die to the shooter. Fuck you guys.
Let's see here. So 12.
Do I need to elaborate further?
No.
11.
Well, I mean, I'll go ahead and say it. Officer suicides are rather high after situations like this, and I hope it's high in Uvalde. That would be.
Sorry, I spoke over you because my headset got unplugged and all that movement.
I was just calling for the officer suicides of those involved that allowed all this to happen.
It would be the most horrible thing you've done.
That would be taking responsibility, as if those police officers decided to delete themselves. That would be them taking some responsibility. Obviously, PTSD and suicides are terrible, but usually that's happening to people who didn't do something wrong. They were just experiencing horrible things that they had no control over. This was a horrible thing that those police officers had full control over. It would be taking responsibility to realize that they screwed up to the point where 19 families don't have kids anymore, and two spouses no longer have their significant other.
So when a American soldier is forced to, for our country, kill the enemy and has their friends die around them, and they are tortured by those realities, and they end up killing themselves, that is a tragedy because they sacrificed. They essentially died in combat, but much more delayed with a lot more torture, right? But then when we have a criminal, a killer who's sitting on death row who offs themselves, no one cries, no one cares. In fact, they might even be happy. When someone who is a rapist, who's harmed many people, ends up dying at their own hand, that is not a tragedy. That is a godsend. When a active shooter, when actually confronted by police, shoots himself in the head, that is not a tragedy. When a police officer who, for most of his life, has been putting their boot on the back of the neck of citizens to shoot, finally realizes that they are complete bags of shit, and they kill themselves, that's not a tragedy.
Yes. Again, usually it's because of a feeling that you can't live with what you've done or what you've experienced. For soldiers, they're just incorrect. They need mental health support. What they did and what happened to them is terrible, but it's not right for them to kill. It's not a good thing for them to kill themselves because they can't live with what they've done. If you sat there and allowed 19 children to die while you pointed guns at their parents trying to save their children, and you can't live with what you did, good.
When that Army vet who had a store and a wife, and he was defending his business from BLM, Antifa, and because he shot someone who was trying to choke him up from behind, who was attacking him.
Oh yeah.
When that person was tortured by activists and the media for defending himself into committing suicide, that was a tragedy because what he did was not wrong. He did nothing wrong, but he then was shamed and tortured and assailed for months. And so that was a tragedy because he did nothing wrong. That's the difference here. These officers objectively chose to let children die because they were cowards. And if they choose that they cannot live with the fact that they will forever, for the rest of their lives, be cowards, and they will always know that they were cowards, and there's no way for them to ever recover that. If they can't live with that and they kill themselves, that is not a tragedy. Some people might call it justice.
Triumvirate, I'm a little more utilitarian. I think just getting over the situation, just getting past it and having some kind of final resolution to it is more agreeable with me than some kind of ambiguous punishment for the rest of their lives. I
mean, I would love for them to go to prison for no other reason.
At minimum,
to torture them.
Obviously, under the current settings, like that's probably what's going to happen to them. But if they decide to shortcut that, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world.
So my preference is that they go to prison so that it prolongs their suffering. If they want to shorten their suffering, that's up to them.
Either way is justice. Alrighty, so 1152, which is not in the AP, is from the timestamp on the picture I selected, which was from...
What is that on the ground?
Well, hold
weird.
on. Yeah, well,
what is
we'll
that?
get into that. So, as you can see, this is a fisheye camera lens that was in the hallway of the school. This was the hallway that the two classrooms were looking through. I don't know where they are in this picture, but they're that way somewhere. Actually, I believe the NSA took this footage and they were able to use their supercomputer, took a break from spying on your dick pics for a second, and crunched the numbers to get this fisheye lens back into a regular flat format by calculating where the pixels were supposed to be. So apparently there's a really nice high quality, like flattened out version of this somewhere, which is actually pretty cool. I'm glad that the NSA sometimes, uses their stuff for not spying on your dick pics. So as you can see in this image, the timestamp is for 11:52. And as you can see, there is at least one ballistic shield and two rifles. The officer on the left and the officer on the right behind the shield, they both have rifles. Those are clearly not, the ATF might think that they're pistols, but they're clearly not pistols. They're rifles. So you can comment on that if you want between these.
Yeah. Okay. So they had said that their reasons for delaying were, we need armor. Oh, we need a shield. Oh, we need rifles. They had those things. And they still didn't do anything.
This would be 29 minutes after the shooter enters the building. And we don't know how long they were standing there with those rifles and shields. But
there's a timestamp, buddy.
It would be, this is 11:52. It was not until 12:50 before this is 58 minutes before they got the shooter. They had rifles and shields 58 minutes before they went in and ended the shooter. Yeah. How much longer did they have those? Presumably much longer. But what did we hear? What have we been hearing for the last month? It was like, we were waiting for shields. We were waiting for rifles. We were outgunned. Again, because one rifle can outgun 7 trained police officers with pistols. Bullshit.
Each one of those SWAT cars had a rifle in it.
Yes, that's very common, especially in Texas, for there to be service rifles in the cars. Obviously, the officers aren't carrying them around. However, it's been common practice that if your police department can afford it, and a state like Texas may even mandate it, is that these squad cars will have rifles and shotguns in the trunk ready to go for situations just like this.
Normal in Texas.
All right, so not to mention if you just stand on any street corner in Texas and say, "Hey, I need a rifle," you'll have 50
people come out of their house and say, "Oh, you gonna borrow mine?"
Like somebody's gonna crawl out of the sewer system and be like, "I got one too."
So 19 officers in the hallway.
Hold on,
30 minutes after
to go first. So
sorry,
So all right, so that was 11:52. Then we have another large time jump to 12:03. A female, age unknown, though one of the students, so I believe they were 4th graders, calls 911 and whispers that she is in classroom 112, McCraw said. The call lasted 1 minute and 23 seconds. Also at 12:03 p.m., officers continue to enter the school with as many as 19 officers in the hallway near the room where the shooter is holed up, McCraw said.
Yes, so 19 officers are in the hallway 30 minutes after the shooter entered the building and opened fire. It will not be until 12:50, 47 minutes later, when the shooter is finally killed. 19 officers, 30 minutes late, and 47 more minutes to go of them chit-chatting in the hallway while 19 kids died or are dying just feet away from them.
It's disgusting.
It is disgusting.
All right, so 12:06, Anne Marie Espinoza, a spokeswoman for the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District, posts on the district school Facebook page, quote, "All campuses are under lockdown status. Uvalde CISD parents, please know at this time, all campuses are under lockdown status due to gunshots in the area. The students and staff are safe in the building. Buildings are secure in a lockdown status. Your cooperation is needed at this time by not visiting the campus. As soon as the lockdown status is lifted, you will be notified. Thank you for your cooperation. Arrest that woman."
Yes, lies. They were not safe in the building. The shooter wasn't just there wasn't just shots in the area. There was shots in the buildings into the heads of students and teachers. This is a complete lie that they were doing to try to prevent people from coming onto the scene.
Well, yeah, I mean, if parents came onto the scene, then the cops couldn't create a safe space for the shooter to kill their kids.
Exactly. This is obstruction of justice, actually. It's an obstruction of these people's right to defend their families.
Well, and it's I imagine that there must be some kind of I don't know what it would be, but I think that there's probably some kind of laws somewhere that are like, if you lie to somebody and it results in a death, like that must be some kind of negligence or criminality to that.
Fox, if there's someone beating up your friend or family member inside of a room, and then someone outside the room is physically using their body to block you from going in to stop them, they would be considered an accomplice.
Yes. Okay, so we have another little bit of a time jump here. Again, I mean, this is every minute must be hours to these kids. 12:10, the same female who called a few minutes ago, she calls 911 again. She says that there are multiple dead, McCraw said during his testimony. She calls again at 12:13 and then again at 12:16 when she says that there are 8 to 9 students still alive.
That's 13 minutes after there were 19 officers in the hallway. 41 minutes after there were 7 officers in the hallway. They murdered those kids with their inaction. That is no ifs, ands, or buts. They had the power, they had the mandate, they had the training, they had the equipment to do their fucking job to save those lives. But they waited way longer than the time necessary for someone to bleed out. They had every opportunity to do the right thing, and they chose not to. If you are too much of a coward to run towards danger to save lives, then you do not sign up to be a police officer. Plain and simple. You're taking on a responsibility that if you can't do, you're taking the spot of someone else who would. Thus, your inaction is criminal. You are allowing someone to die.
Yes. All right. So also at 12:10, the first group of Deputy U.S. Marshals from Del Rio arrives. So they arrive at 12:10. The like 4th or 5th call that this poor girl made was at 12:16. So they arrived 6 minutes before her like 5th call. And what were they doing for 6 minutes when they arrived at 12:10? So they arrived at 12:10 from nearly 70 miles away. They got 70 miles in 40 minutes, and those other officers couldn't make it 7 feet in the same amount of time. They came in 70 miles to assist the various other law enforcement officers that were already on scene, assist them in doing nothing, presumably, according to the Marshal Services. At 12:15, U.S. Border Patrol tactical team members arrive with shields. However, we just saw what's this? Is what 25 minutes earlier? 25 minutes earlier, they've got a shield there. And the what do they need? What were they waiting on shields for? As you heard from McCraw in his opening, they waited for shields. They waited for radios. They waited for a key that they didn't need. Why all the waiting? They were also saying that they were waiting for rifles.
Those were lies.
All lies. 12:19. Another girl, a different one this time, calls from room 111. She calls 911 and ends the call when a fellow student tells her to hang up, McCraw said. 12:21. The shooter fires his gun again, and officers believe he is at one of the doors to one of the adjoining classrooms, McCraw said. Police moved down the hallway. So one of the things that we found out during the testimony was we saw schematics of the classrooms. And so what this was a 2 classrooms that were next to each other. They both had doors out into the hallways. However, there was also a door inside the classroom that led between each other. So the police officers could have gone into the other classroom and staged themselves there.
And at least save the kids in that class.
And then they could have made a double or even a triple if you include the windows. They could have had a double or triple angle of egress into the situation.
Yeah.
But the doors were locked.
No, they
No, they
weren't.
weren't.
They never tried the doors. They were too cowardly to even try the doors.
All right. So 12.
And also, I want to point out that they also know the setup of these classrooms because their active shooter training happened in this school.
Yes. All right, 12:21. The shooter fires his gun again, and officers believes he's at one of the doors to the adjoining classrooms, and police move down the hallway. Just read that. So go for it, Dyer.
So at 12:21, 46 minutes after the first 7 officers were outside the classroom, during that 46 minutes, they received 12 more officers as backup and ballistic shields. They already had ballistic shields. They had additional ballistic shields, and now they are retreating.
Yes.
Why are they retreating? They have an insane numerical value, numerical advantage. They have a insane advantage as far as equipment, and they have someone locked down in a position they can't retreat from.
That they have 3 possible entries into. The door to the hallway, the door from the other classroom, and
they don't even need to enter. They can actually shoot the guy because they have able to triangulate him through the windows and doorways.
Oh, well, so that was also in I don't have that in here, but that was also in the hearing. So there was a discussion that they could set up a sniper position. However, the police department had an inaccurate understanding of the local buildings, and they thought that there was a church that would have been in the way of a sniper position to that window. However, that church doesn't exist. So a bunch of people who live in that town were like, oh, well, what if we put up a sniper over there? And someone was like, nah, the map says it's a church there. Yeah, that makes sense. I've lived here for 30 years, and I don't
even need a fucking sniper. Just someone on the other side of the window would have been fine.
Yeah. So they didn't even review to see if their map was accurate. No one who lived there was like, there's not a church there, you idiot. It's a parking lot. No one realized that, and they just dismissed the idea. That was at like 11:40. Again, there's kind of multi-layered timeline here. That's why you're gonna have to go back and watch the full or a more detailed breakdown of the actual hearing. The APs being a little bit more selective on what they've got there. Now, again, there's multiple things going on here. You've got the school police chief who didn't have a radio, and he's waiting for his radio for 40 minutes. Then he's looking around for keys for another half hour.
He's physically on scene. He didn't even need a fucking radio.
He was physically on scene within about 5 minutes of the shooting, apparently.
So there's no need for him. There's other radios on other officers around him that could have communicated or passed any message that was necessary, and they were doing that.
So also we learned that due to the concrete construction of the school building, the police radio signals were not able to penetrate the building. It's a 1-story building, which is actually relatively common if you know anything about radio waves. Is concrete is like a sponge for radio waves. It just absorbs them, which is known, and there's solutions to that. And the police would have known that and did know that from their previous trainings on site at the school building. Also, you could just get stronger radios, but however, knowing that the radios don't work in the school before this happened,
shit, with 19 officers, one could stand outside for you.
Yes, you could use. There's so the Border Patrol radios, they can work in a relay mode, and apparently the Border Patrol radios were able to work while the police ones weren't. But as soon as they changed them to the police frequencies, they went out of relay mode, and they were no longer able to penetrate the building either. However, there are relay devices that you can get. They have these inside police stations that already have that problem, where it will relay the radio signal to places that the concrete's absorbing it. The police could have issued the school a radio relay.
Like none of the you don't need to have radio contact to run toward the shooter and shoot him.
Yes.
It was necessary. This is all excuses that are immaterial to the facts.
Yeah, I mean you're talking about based off the schematics, which I don't have pulled up here, but the schematics that we were able to see during the hearings, again, still encourage you to go watch those. The hall, basically it was like a T intersection, and we saw that. That's what we can see here on the camera here. I believe off to the right is the door to the outside, and then you're looking down this hallway, and at the end of that hallway is also a door to outside, and somewhere between there is the classroom. So we're talking about not a tremendous amount of space here. You can just shout. You don't really need the radio. You can just shout it out to each other. We're not, and you could even, you got 19 officers. You could use a runner. We also found out during the hearing, although the AP doesn't list a timestamp for it, we also found out during the hearings that of the 19 officers that were in the hallway at one point, several of them, an unknown number currently, several of them were pulled off of the hallway to go begin restraining parents and holding them back. They took officers out of the hallway instead of... I can't even like explain it because it's just so ridiculous.
It's so stupid. And I mean, apparently at some point he was sticking his head and gun out of the door to shoot down at the officers. But why are the officers only on one end of this hallway where they have access to both sides?
Yeah, Crossfire Hurricane much, guys? Come on. All right, where are we at here? So 12:21. Let's see, 12:21. The shooter fires his gun. No, I already read that part. Also at 12:21. 3 shots can be heard during a 911 call. Around this time, the police are stuck in the hallway because both classroom doors are locked, and the employees must seek a key from a school employee.
This would turn out not to be true. The doors were not locked at all, nor did they try to check to see if they were locked. They just assumed they were locked because, you know, that makes sense.
Yes. Also, they had their hooligan. So, from the Daily Wire, you want to read this article for us, Dyer?
Sure. So from the Daily Wire, law enforcement officers reportedly never tried to open the door at a Texas elementary school last month where a shooter murdered 19 children. Surveillance footage shows that the police never tried to open a door to the 2 classrooms at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. In the 77 minutes between the time a gunman entered the rooms and massacred 21 people and the officers finally breaching the door, by breaching, they just opened it with the handle.
Yeah, I breached the door to my bedroom this morning.
Yeah, I think that's a very liberal use of the word breaching. Breaching implies there's some sort of resistance and that you had to overcome said resistance. No, they simply opened the doors. Let me restate that sentence correctly. Massacred 21 people, and officers finally opened the door and killed him. The San Antonio Express News reported, noting that the information came from a law enforcement official, thus far has been inaccurate, so I don't believe you, who was involved in the investigating law enforcement response to the tragedy. When 90% of what's been said about the whole situation has been a lie, it's kind of hard to believe any law enforcement from Uvalde. So, quote, investigators believe that the 18-year-old gunman who killed 19 children and 2 teachers at the school on May 22nd could not have locked the door to the connected classrooms from the inside. The doors are reportedly designed so they can only be locked from or unlocked from the outside, and police might have assumed that the door was locked, but they'd be wrong and would be making such assumption with zero evidence to think so. The report, in fact, there's more evidence that they should know how the school works since they do their active shooters training at this school. Thus, they have gone through procedures where they are breaching classrooms, which I don't mean opening doors. I mean actually breaching. They should know how the locking mechanisms work. So I'm going to say they're lying, but anyways, they may have assumed the door was locked, probably lied. The report said that it is not known if the door of the classroom where the 18-year-old male was holed up was even locked. In fact, there's no evidence there was. The source told the local news that it didn't even matter whether the door was locked because officers had access to the entire time of a hooligan, a crowbar-like tool that they could have used to open the door to the classrooms, even if it was locked. So the fact that they're waiting for a key was simply a delaying tactic to continue doing nothing and being cowards.
Yes. I believe and they went through this, I think, in the hearing. It's kind of just trivia. I believe the brand name of the device is Halligan, but everybody calls it a hooligan because it sounds cooler.
It's funnier.
Yes. Be more funny if
This is
they
a
used
hilarious
it.
story.
All right, so 12:36. 12:36. This whole thing started at 11:33, so we're an hour and 3 minutes into this since the first shots were fired. Another child calls 911 for 21 seconds. Around this time, a girl calls 911 and is told to stay on the line and stay very quiet. McCraw said the girl says, quote, he shot the door. At 12:43, Jesus. I mean, what are we at now? I mean, we're at like 7 or 8 calls from the students from within the classrooms. 12:43, the girl urges the 911 dispatcher, please send the police now.
Please send the police now. God, this story is heart-wrenching. The police have been there for 68 minutes. That's 1 hour and 8 minutes. They've been there for over an hour, and you still have children calling on 911, begging for the police to come. These kids likely have been told that the police are the good guys. They're there to come and save you when you're in trouble. And I promise every one of these kids doesn't grow up knowing that's not true.
Yep.
I mean,
right.
You have an entire generation in the city that are not going to trust the police.
Yeah. All right. 12:46. The girl says that she can hear the police next door. So they must have finally gotten into the other classroom. At 12:47, she again asks 911, please send the police now. They've been there. They've been there for an hour at this point. 12:50, officers open the door with keys from a school employee that they did not need and enter the classroom to kill the shooter. How stupid do you think that police officer who used the keys felt when he put the keys? Because you know it feels different when the door's already unlocked and you use the key. And like, how stupid do you think he felt when it didn't move because it was probably already all the way over into the unlocked position and it didn't actually move? And then he just probably looked around to see if anybody saw that he didn't actually use the key and then opened the door like he did. I bet you that's what happened. All right, so 12:50, officers with keys from the school employee enter the classroom and kill the shooter. McCraw said shots can be heard over the 911 call.
So that's 75 minutes. One of the other stories said 77 minutes.
Well, they were saying 77 from the time the shooter entered the school. I'm saying from 75 from when the officers entered the school.
Got it. So 75 minutes after the first of the 7 officers on scene until the time that the shooter was stopped. That's not abysmal. That is way worse. I can't think of a word to properly describe how bad that is. We have other shootings in Texas, for apples to apple comparison, where the shooter was stopped within a minute.
Well, no, most shootings are stopped within 2 minutes. Like on average, like more than 2 minutes for a shooting event is really, really, really long. It's mostly stopped on average in less than 2 minutes, sometimes in less than a minute. So, I mean, this was, thousands of times worse than the average shooting length.
This would not have happened if the police had done what they were supposed to do. This would not have happened if the parents were allowed to go in by themselves. The parents alone, if there was no police there, could have stopped this threat in less time. And in fact, what makes this even worse is the police on scene, the on-scene commander wanted it to be longer. He was still given the order to not go in, and it was police who broke those rules.
It was Border Patrol. The Border Patrol violated the orders. Yeah.
Yeah. The Border Patrol, they violated his order, and they went in. So had they not, more children would likely be dead than did die.
Yes. I mean, it's presumable that many of the children that died ended up dying as a result of blood loss that happened in the minutes after they were shot, and that they may have been saved with, applying pressure and things like that, like to the wounds to make sure they don't bleed out. However, an hour and a half is just far too long for a child who's going to have like the blood volume like a half or less than a regular adult sized person. Like they don't have a lot of blood to bleed out. All right. The rest of this is just after they shot him. You can, I guess, hear on the calls and stuff like that, officers moving around, and then they declare the situation over. Bravo for them. Alrighty. Like I said, there's a lot more to this, a lot more that was discovered this week. But this was a dense week. There was a lot of stuff that went on, and so we got to get going with other stories here. So, anything else to say on that, Dyer?
Yeah, I called my the governor and the senators, and let them know that if they wanted to get my vote in Texas, that the police officer needed to be held accountable, and I mean not just called out, not just condemned, but put in jail for their actions. I'm willing to be a single issue voter on this. I will not. You are not a representative of for me if you allow this to happen without any consequences. You might be saying that there's some other bigger issues at stake. Our country has wider issues that need to be considered. You know what? This is a litmus test.
Well,
they're not going to defend us against the Democrats if they won't defend us against this.
Yeah. And I guess obviously the as is tradition with our politicians, they took the exact wrong message from this event. The obvious message is that the police and the government are incapable, and unwilling to keep you and your family safe, and only you can keep your family safe. And so, of course, the wrong message was taken from that, and there was a lot of gun stuff that happened this week, particularly trying to take them away from you. On the graves of the Uvalde children who died because their parents were not allowed to go in and rescue them, not allowed to use their firearms to go in and rescue their children, on the graves of them, a bunch of Republicans and Democrats this week passed laws to further take away the right of parents to keep and bear arms. How about that for a political phrasing, is the right of parents to keep and bear arms?
How about this? A situation where the government restricted the access to firearms and did not allow lawful citizens to bear arms led to the death of 21 people, and the response to it was that the government should further restrict the access of firearms to citizens.
Clearly. All right, so
is that not insane? Your solution is what caused the problem. Required a solution.
Yep. So, big week for gun stuff, mostly bad. A little bit of good stuff. However, the good stuff for gun control that you may have heard this week, it's not as good as a lot of people would have you believe, and we'll get through that here in a second. But first, the bad news. From NPR, the House has passed the gun control bill. The next stop is Biden's desk. That was updated on Friday. So, the House of Representatives this week, they passed the quote-unquote bipartisan gun safety bill, 234 to 193 on Friday, exactly 1 month after the mass shooting in Texas, which took the lives of 19 children and 2 adults while the police sat there and watched it happen. The Senate passed its version of the bill late on Tuesday by a 65 to 33 vote. Because what the story was going to be is that after Tuesday, when 10 Republicans voted to pass this bill through cloture, meaning that it was going to be allowed to be voted on as a full bill, the story this was supposed to be was the 10 Republicans that betrayed you. But however, after Thursday night, it became the story of the 15 Republicans that betrayed you. And actually now 29 Republicans, including the ones in the House, which we're going to go through their names here in a second. As you may have seen, we got a list here, and we're going to read through them. So it is the first gun control measure to come out of Congress in nearly 3 decades. Ironically, on the week that the Supreme Court just struck down a major gun control bill from the state of New York. Let's hear the bill. The narrow bill, it is not a narrow bill. That is some editorialization there, NPR. The narrow bill, which is unnarrow in its scope, focuses on mental health and school safety and includes incentives for states to pass so-called red flag laws. The legislation resulted from negotiations among 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats that began after 2 mass shootings in Buffalo, New York and Uvalde, Texas. Yeah, so in Buffalo, New York, where you had a guy who was spun up by an FBI agent on Discord before he went out and shot people. And you got Uvalde, where the police at gunpoint prevented parents and prevented other police officers from stopping the shooting until 19 kids were killed. So yeah, not false flags there at all. This bill is a compromise, said Senator Chris Murphy, who's the Democrat from Connecticut, who led the negotiations right before the Senate vote began. It doesn't, quote, it doesn't do everything I want it to do, but what we are going to do will save thousands of lives, presumably
want to save a
thousands of
single life in these two shootings.
Yeah,
though.
presumably thousands of shooters will have their lives saved by not being shot by parents who had their guns taken away from them, without violating anyone's Second Amendment rights.
Dude, I do not laugh at that.
I mean, it's just like, I mean, words, they do have meanings. You do have to typically use them. Let's see here. So the Senate begins its 2-week July 4th recess after Friday. So they passed this and gave the middle finger to America, and now they're off to the Hamptons for 2 weeks. How many days are you getting off for 4th of July, Di? Are you getting full 2 weeks off? I sure as hell ain't.
I'm not getting that many days off. I'm getting 4 days.
Well, so that was the quick and dirty. Again, this was originally a slightly different story. However, this got passed late on Thursday night. So now it's through the House, it's through the Senate, and it's waiting for Joe to sign it. Who, I mean, there's always the possibility that Joe will be like physically incapable of signing it. That may actually be a legitimate possibility we can hope for. We'll get to his fitness for office in the next story here. So I guess if maybe Joe will have an aneurysm while he's trying to sign it. Maybe that would stop it from becoming a law. All right, so
fingers crossed, I guess.
Yeah, the list of traitors to the Constitution. So we had 15 Republicans from the Senate who voted for this thing, and 14 Republicans from the House who voted for this thing. From the Senate, we have, and I've already sent some information off to my senator. I guess I'm gonna have to send it off to my. Although I'm not in these representative districts, however, but I might have to send them some stuff too. Let's hear. So you had the minority leader for the Republicans. Dear God, why is he the minority leader? Because yes, this is exactly what Republicans are baying for. So minority leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, voted to take away your guns. Senator John Cornyn, Republican of Texas, voted to take away your guns. Senator Tom Tillis, Republican from North Carolina, voted to take away your guns. Senator Roy Blunt, Republican of Missouri, voted to take away your guns. That is Missouri, right? Or is that Montana?
Oh shit.
Montana.
Montana, yeah.
Why is Montana a state? They're not real. Senator Richard Burr, Republican from North Carolina, voted to take away your guns. Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana? LA? Is that Louisiana? It must be.
Yes.
Voted to take away your guns. Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, voted to take away your guns. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina voted to take away your guns. Senator Rob Portman, Republican of Ohio, voted to take away your guns. Senator Mitt Romney, Republican of Utah, voted to take away your guns. Senator Pat Toomey, Republican from Pennsylvania, voted to take away your guns. Senator Joni Ernst, Republican from Iowa, voted to take away your guns. Senator Lisa Murkowski, Republican from Alaska, voted to take away your guns. Senator Todd Young, Republican from Indiana, voted to take away your guns. Senator Shelley Moore Capito, Republican from West Virginia, voted to take away your guns.
Then we have the 14 House members, which were Representative Liz Cheney, who is not really a Republican but says she is, Rhino.
Well, none of these guys are Republicans anymore, right?
Yeah, good point. They're all Rhinos. I'm talking about, or not. Yeah, these are all Rhinos. So then we have Representative Fred Upton from Michigan, and we have Representative Anthony Gonzalez from Ohio. Then we have Representative Steve Chabot from Ohio. Jeez, Ohio has it bad.
Michigan. I knew Chabot. I went to school with his son. He's a good drinker, good beer pong player. And I worked on fucking Chabot's campaign once. God damn it.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, I'm going to send him a letter though, say I was a former campaign worker for him. Fucker.
Yeah. So Representative Michael Turner from Ohio and Representative Dave Joyce from Ohio. That's four.
That's a lot of Ohio. So Ohio just passed constitutional carry. Ohio just passed a massive, massive reduction in the requirements for teachers to conceal carry in the classroom. Ohio is racing towards constitutional gun restrictions, which would be none. No constitutional, no infringements at all. Ohio is racing towards that. Yet somehow our federal representatives are still going in the other direction. Recall.
All of them should be removed from office
if not a recall, definitely the next cycle, but I would say recall. These are not Republicans. They're not serving the people, and they're directly going against the interest that the people have been voting for. Then we have also Representative Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania. We have Representative Chris Jacobs from New York. We have Representative Vincent Gonzalez from Texas. I should also be sending him a letter. Then we have Representative Mari
Fitzpatrick.
I said them already. I did that out of order.
Oh, okay.
Then we have Representative Mari Salazar from Florida. That's Florida, right?
Yep.
Okay. Then we have Representative John Ketko from Kentucky, and then Representative Adam Kinzinger from Illinois, and then we have Representative Tom Rice from
South Carolina.
And then we have Representative Peter Meyer from Michigan.
All right. If those are yours, go to their website, send them an email. That's what I did.
Send them multiple emails and phone calls.
Be respectful.
Yes, of
that's
course.
what I did with mine. Actually, I could probably read you. Fill in for like 20 seconds.
So be respectful, but make it so there's no ifs, ands, or buts about what they need to do for your vote. They need to know exactly what you need them to do. If they're going to represent you and your interests, they need to receive lots of phone calls from their constituents saying exactly what they want so they know what actions. Because in the end, a lot of these politicians who have zero principles are just trying to do what their voter base is going to want. So you need to make it clear what they want, what you want.
All right.
Do you have your letter?
Yes. So I don't have it pulled up on the screen here, but I got it pulled up on my phone. So I went to my senator's webpage, and he had his contact me segment, and it was a little form that you could fill out and put a message in there. And the topic selector didn't have gun control because gun control is not a Republican issue. Why would his topic selector have a gun control thing on it? So I started off my message. I find it amazing that the topic selector on this form doesn't even have an option for gun control. And of course it does not, because who would ever think that a Republican would support gun control? You not only assisted a major gun control bill in clearing a procedural hurdle, this was before he voted on it to actually pass it into a law, you have also given legitimacy to the radicalization of the Democrat Party and the failures of the Biden administration. Given recent my state legislation loosening the infringements on the right to bear arms, you are clearly misaligned from the values of this state and of the Republican Party. You are on the wrong side of the Constitution and on the wrong side of history. I understand that many disagree with the Second Amendment, but the Constitution has a process for further amendments. If you have a problem with the Second Amendment, the correct process is to propose another constitutional amendment. Attempting to circumvent that process through legislative fiat is illegitimate and unconstitutional. You were not elected to circumvent the constitutional process. You were elected to defend them, and you have failed your duty, and you should resign. I also have a weekly podcast, and I respectfully invite you for an interview to respond to this and justify your actions. Very respectfully, Fox. I did not get the response I got was a form letter. It did
Surprise not. Pikachu face.
Yes, he did not accept to our world-renowned international sensational podcast somehow. His loss. My senator is also retiring this year, so he doesn't have to get reelected. He's not worried about that. Thanks for that, guy. So send something like that. Be kindful, be respectful. Don't get yourself put on a list. And in fact, one of the interesting things is the red flag laws are so liberal that even using your First Amendment right to speak out about infringements on your second, that could be a red flag. Sending a letter to your senator could be considered a red flag event. In fact, one of the Democrats, I don't remember which one off the top of my head, put out a statement this week that said that anybody who wants, anybody who has a problem with red flag laws, that's probably a red flag that they might do something wrong. So just being in opposition to red flag laws is itself considered by some to be a red flag event.
How convenient.
Yes. All right. So, well, obviously the bill said that basically the states are now enabled and have money available if they want to create their own red flag programs. Basically, we'll have to go through the whole red flag thing another time now that it's more of a reality. But we don't have time to do that today. But basically, if you have a crazy ex-girlfriend, change your name so she can't find you and red flag you. If you have a crazy leftist aunt, block her on Facebook so that she can't red flag you. Do you have kids in public school? You better be careful what you say around them. You got a nosy neighbor? You better move. You a YouTuber? Well, you pretty much don't have gun rights anymore because everyone's going to red flag you. And oh, God forbid you ever served this country and need a little help from time to time with your mental health. That's red flag city. And if you ever want to exercise your First Amendment rights in opposition to the current power structures, well, you should probably just put your hands above your heads right now, just in case. That's what red flags are going to do. Have fun.
Yep. It is punishing someone, taking away their rights without actually having charged them with a crime, which is inherently unconstitutional. They're not even accused of a crime. They're just having done something that you've decided is an indicator. And you know why it's called an indicator is because it is not proof. It's because there have been a lot of people who are shooters who did this thing. So now, but there's also been a lot of people who weren't shooters who did the same thing. But they're going to treat you as though you are a terrorist, that you are a active shooter in the making, just because you had a hard time. A lot of people have mental issues or have times of crisis that don't go up and shoot up schools. But they're going to treat everyone who has committed no crime as if they are the same as a criminal. That's insane.
Triumvirate says that MO is Missouri and that MT is Montana. Well, that just doesn't make any sense, Triumvirate. It should be MI and MO. I don't know. They just shouldn't be states. If there's not enough room for their abbreviation.
Did we really save so much pixels by not writing out the full name?
I don't know. This was what? This was AP or is this NPR? Yeah, this was NPR.
It was really saved.
Yeah. Alrighty. So, in the, I guess, attempt at good news, though I'm sure a lot of you guys thought it was good news. Dyer and I are here to dissuade you from that. Another big news this week about blaster stuff. The Supreme Court on Thursday found that New York's concealed carry permit process was unconstitutional. Big shock. Now, a lot of people are very excited about this, but here's why it's not that big of a deal and why you shouldn't be excited about it. It was a very narrow decision that affects only New York. It was explicitly said in the decision that this affects nothing else. It is not meant to be conveyed to imply that it affects anything else, only New York. It should have been found that New York's carry permit process violated the Second Amendment's infringement clause, and that all concealed carry permit processes in every state are also unconstitutional. So I guess the Supreme Court decision was a victory for New York, and I guess it does set the precedent for future cases in other states, which I guess is good. But the fact remains that the decision as is the wrong decision. It's a bad law that puts the rights of the government above the rights of the citizens in the other 49 states. And above all, it was a cowardly decision for the court to rule so narrowly on a expressly constitutional issue.
Yeah, so one of the other... there was another brief that was released with the decision where some of the conservative members of the court were actually pushing for what you were describing as saying that more broadly, such a law that was existing in New York could not be constitutional in any state, which is basically what you're saying. But basically, it would say that no other state could also say that the state could choose whether or not you have a reason to have a gun or not. But they decided not to go with that because they were cowards.
Was this for New York City or New York State? I think it was for the city. I don't know.
I think it's a state.
Either way.
Regardless, just to clarify what exactly was the law that was being addressed was New York, you had the application process to buy a firearm that most states have, except for in addition to showing that you got the training and you passed the background check and all that stuff, you also had to present a reason for having the gun. And the problem was Basically, no reason that an average person could submit was considered legitimate by the state. So basically, you could only get a gun in New York if you were rich, powerful, or famous. Anyone else, unless you were law enforcement probably, but anyone else, you didn't have a legitimate reason. Thus, the state had given itself the right to determine whether or not you had the right to have a gun. It wasn't that you had the right to gun and that the state was assuring you were not a criminal before you were given it.
Now, why don't I want you to be excited about this? Because I don't want you to get complacent. This, unless you live in New York, and even if you do live in New York, well, you've got 49 states worth of brothers and sisters to think about. This should not get you excited. This should not get you complacent. In fact, you should be howling at your representatives. They need to do what the Supreme Court won't and enshrine in law that it is illegal to violate the Constitution for the Second Amendment. Because this doesn't do, unless you live in New York, this doesn't do anything for you. And if you get complacent, it never will. It never will. And that's what I think a lot of people are hoping for is, we got some fake red meat. I mean, this is basically the Impossible Burger. It looks like red meat, but it doesn't taste like it. You got good. We got rolled. The Supreme Court rolled back gun control legislation. No, they didn't. They rolled it back in a very narrow area of the country, not your area, unless you live in New York. But there's the rest of us to consider. There's the rest of us to contend with. And it shouldn't be that every single state, that we have to have 49 other people, one from every state, bring 49 more cases to the Supreme Court so that each one can then be said, oh, you know what? New York's got the right to the Constitution. So does Texas. So does Ohio. So does Montana or Illinois. They've all got the right. Now we have to figure that out for every single state? No. As a part of joining the Union was what set out that the Constitution, that the citizens of each state are granted the rights validated and enumerated in the Constitution. You don't have to fight for those individually for every state. That was a part of the joining the Union. This is ridiculous. This is a terrible decision because of that. Because now there's still ambiguity for the other 49 states, and now we have to wait. The Supreme Court hears a gun case maybe once every 22 years, I think was the average for like the last century. So what? We have to wait another lifetime, another 20 years until we get to hear another case for maybe one more state. I mean, at this rate, it'd be like the year 35,000 before we got through all 50 states.
Yeah, 25.
Yes.
That's a song. So another part of the problem.
It'd be Trump's 80th term.
Yeah. Another problem is that because the decision was so narrow, it didn't limit New York on other kinds of limitations on gun issuing. So what they're going to do as a response, mark my words, is they're just going to find other ways to make getting a license prohibitively expensive or require so many ridiculous number of hours you basically need to be a police officer on duty for 20 years before you have the level of experience and training that they will allow you, because they can set any limitations of rules, right? They can say you have to do anything A through Z requirements to get the gun. That wasn't the thing that was reversed by the Supreme Court. What was reversed was specifically saying that you had to have a justification for having it. Okay, now you don't need to have a justification. Now you just need to jump through more hoops, and it's even more expensive. You have to be a millionaire to own a gun.
All right, Republicans on Monday, they have a choice ahead of them on Monday. It's the weekend.
They want to stay in office.
Yeah, well, it's the weekend, so we're taking it off. But Monday, we're going to get to this Roe v. Wade decision at the end of the show. We have a lot to talk about with that. That's why we're putting it towards the end. Republicans for 2 lifetimes now have made Roe v. Wade one of the issue du jour, that if you elect Republicans, you will get Republican judges who will overturn Roe. Well, Roe's gone. What now? I think that gun control, I think that's the next thing. That's the next topic du jour for the Republican Party. You elect Republicans, you get judges on the court that will uphold the Second Amendment. That is what I think on Monday, that is what the push needs to be. Well, we'll see what happens. I doubt that's where they're going to go. But that's what needs to happen. To the extent that anybody can raise ruckus about that, that's the direction you need to push. That's what you need to be talking about. Is this is the new Roe v. Wade. We are going to be pushing Second Amendment protections as was outlaid in the Constitution. All right. Ready for the next story?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Joe Biden. Is he fit for office? First,
Is that a serious question?
well, why don't we get some context about what it means to be fit for office? Let's do a little bit of a flashback here to last year, where the eunuch Zerself had this to say.
Radio's narrative for months has been that Joe Biden is falling apart. You just heard Ben Shapiro say it, falling apart. And there he is riding a bike, out for a bike ride, and Fox of all networks is the one that showed it happen. Look, we are radio's...
All right, so you heard it from Zerself. Being able to ride a bike is proof of fitness for office. So that was the shot. Here's the chaser.
You know, I didn't...
Dr. Biden, how was anniversary?
And down he goes.
Turtle. You didn't show the picture of him on his back with his arms and leg in the air like he's still on the bicycle. It was so funny. Like his
I got
brain
that
had
somewhere. There
It's
we
like
go.
his brain had there he is, right there. It's like his brain hadn't responded to the fact that he's falling yet.
Yeah, it's like a mannequin fell
Nazi
over.
fags.
How dare you?
Jersey Negro.
Why would you do that?
Adder Lupus, he sent us something, and I will have to wait for the stream to catch up with that on YouTube because I can't see it on my new smaller setup. He says, I'm late once again. Oh, well, hope you guys are having a good Sunday. Thank you, Adder Lupus, for the $5. I think we are having a good Sunday. At least
I think so.
we have a good time doing a show, even if we're talking about things that aren't a good time.
Yeah, hanging out with you guys is enjoyable. The news we're talking about is depressing. But so, do you see Trump's response to this? It was hilarious. Trump said,
I did. Actually, I've got that clip here.
Okay,
let's
that's
see here. So, we actually have we have another clip. Well, you put a pin in that for a second, and we'll get to that clip in a second here. So, we actually have this from another angle here. Is the president falling once again? As you know, it's not us saying it. It's what's the name? The eunuch from Brian Stelter, who said that riding a bike is evidence of fitness for office. So, I mean, that's not us saying it. That's him. So,
yeah.
If Joe can't ride a bike anymore, then,
they just set him up on the bike, like just around the corner, just for a photo op.
Oh, yeah, no. So the only reason why he's riding the bike is because they need some evidence that he's not literally falling apart. And I guess in doing so, they've now... I can see... Okay, so I'm looking at his shoes here. And so I'm
biking with us.
I'm an avid cyclist. Those are, I believe, what you might use for like a CrossFit shoe, which is like typically the type of shoe that you would wear in a gym that is carpeted or has like a sticky rubber floor that's going to give you some grip, because you don't need to have grippy shoes if there's already grip on the floor. Those are the type of shoes that you would use for like working out and training indoors, or maybe on like a track, like a track outside. That is not the type of shoes that you'd wear for biking. Because, well, first off, because the soles are soft, which means the bike pedals are going to tear up the soles, which is never good. But also they're not going to grip. And they're probably, because they're not biking shoes, you can see how wide the foot is. Well, he's got those straps on his pedals that he's putting his feet in. Bike shoes are narrower because you need to get your foot in and out of them. You need a wide shoe when you're running and jumping to absorb the impact. When you're biking shoes don't need to absorb the impact.
So even if he's not someone who is an avid biker, so he doesn't have the shoes that are good for biking, I actually have two sets of basically they're just running shoes. One is for actually running, and one is for biking because I'm a novice with biking, right? But the problem is, the reason why I have to have two pairs of shoes is if you use the wrong shoes for biking, the soles get ripped off very quickly, and thus can't be used for running.
Yeah, the bike, the pedals, the parts on them that are supposed to like stick to your shoes, like they rip the sole off. So, all right. So that was Joe showing that he's unfit for office. And here was Trump's response.
No, I'm serious. I hope he's okay.
That's sweet.
Fell off a bicycle. I make this pledge to you today. I will never, ever ride a bicycle.
That was Donald Trump.
Oh, thank you.
God damn this guy.
Thank you, Trump. As has been pointed out multiple times, is by no means a unique take, but Trump is well known to be self-deprecating, and so in that he was, it was a very well crafted bit that he did, where he was didn't give it to the media. He said, I hope Joe's okay, and we all do, because I mean. Why would we hope Joe's okay? Because Kamala Harris. Look, Kamala Harris, come on.
You really want Kamala Harris?
Yeah.
This is how you get Kamala Harris.
Yeah, so as I said to Dyer earlier in the week, we were approximately 3 newtons of force from a Kamala Harris presidency.
Thank God he's wearing a helmet, because I don't think he ever, look where his head is, right?
Yeah, were you ever, like, when you were in school, did they ever do those, like, bike safety days where, like, they showed you, like, they made, like, a Jell-O brain and showed you what happened when it dropped without the helmet and then what would happen when it did drop? Like, that Jell-O brain is, like, actually Joe's brain. It's just Jell-O.
So I went to school in California, so we didn't even learn what the abbreviations for states were.
Did you don't learn what the pronouns for the states were?
Abbreviations.
I would
That's a callback from previously us not knowing what different states were.
I want to be. I want my pronouns to be like a state abbreviation. Like I want to be like Moself and Mint.
All
right, that is what's missing from the Xeno pronouns is the state abbreviations. Come on.
I identify as Cal.
Yes. All right. So, but no, it was a good bit from Trump. He's said I hope Joe's okay. I would never ride a bike. Well, what's Trump say? Is that Trump knows that he obviously is not fit enough to ride a bike. And that's fine, because guess what fitness for presidential office means? Nothing to do with your physicality, though sometimes a little bit. It's mental capacity.
Yeah, so
clearly Joe doesn't. And Trump's smart enough to know that his body can't go on a bicycle. Joe Biden is not smart enough to realize that his body shouldn't go on a bicycle. Yet somehow he's making decisions for what we're doing in Ukraine, for instance.
No one elected Biden at all, but then no one also elected Biden to ride a bicycle. So the thing is, as you get older, the membranes in your brain and the blood vessels, they get thinner, and it's easier to get a hemorrhage in your brain from an impact.
And Joe Biden's had multiple aneurysms and surgeries for them over the last 30 years.
He's prone to them, and a head strike is also likely to cause that problem. So it's really dumb. I would say retardedly irresponsible to take an elderly man of his age and capabilities and force him to do a more dangerous physical activity for his age than is necessary. That's why they have workout equipment for older people that are less impact and far less dangerous, so they can still work out and still be healthy, but not have the additional risk. He's the fucking president.
The federal government just had a $70 million contract with Peloton to buy 30,000 Pelotons and memberships for all of the bureaucracy buildings in the executive. So other than that being a whole scandal on its own, because guess who owns a lot of Peloton stock? Oh, Congress does.
That really says a lot about every gym I've ever been in the military.
Yes. Well, you're not in, if you're in the FBI, you get a Peloton. Anyways, but Joe presumably has access to one of these Pelotons now. So use it. Alrighty. Our next sort of story, or I guess section of this story about Joe Biden's fitness is, I struggled to, you probably know what it's going to be, but I tried to come up with a witty joke for this while I was writing this, and I just don't know. I can't, I'm not a comedian, so it's really hard for me to think of any more ways to say that Joe Biden has Jell-O for brains. Not even Jell-O that's set, but the kind of Jell-O where you just mixed it and it's still just liquidy from the powder.
Right.
That's Joe's brain. I don't know how else to say that other than just saying it again like that. So we have from the New York Post. Whoa, that is
the fuck?
Sorry if you have anything seizure related. It's not intentional. Alrighty. take your seat. A very specific cheat sheet reminds Joe Biden how to act. Thank you, New York Post. Let's see here. So, President Biden on Thursday inadvertently held up a comically detailed cheat sheet prepared by his staff. That is not commentary or opinion. It was a fact. It was a news fact that it was comically detailed, not editorialized at all. So here, a comically detailed cheat sheet prepared by his staff instructing the gaffe-prone leader, also a fact, of the free world to take your seat and limit his remarks to 2 minutes. A photographer snapped an image of the document when Biden held it up backwards at a meeting with wind industry executives. Surprisingly, that he needs to have like a whole industry of hot air to get through what his points were, which he attended after skipping his administration's morning meeting with oil companies to Wait, I guess I didn't read this enough before the stream. So he attended a meeting with wind industry executives, which he attended after skipping his morning meeting with oil companies about combating record gas prices. Jesus Christ! I didn't even realize that was in here. Fuck me. God damn it.
Oh my God.
All right. The prepared instructions for Joe Biden. I mean, that's a goddamn story on its own. The prepared instructions for Biden titled, quote, offshore wind drop-by sequence of events. I don't know about that one. Tell Biden to, quote, enter the Roosevelt room and say hello to participants. The paper then says, you take your seat. The typed up note says the reporters arrive. You give brief comments, 2 minutes. When reporters depart, you ask Liz Schult, President AFL-CIO, a question, and then you thank participants and you depart. Because if you don't tell Joe Biden to depart, what does he do? I mean, honestly, that's good advice for him, because what does he do when he's not told to depart, Dyer? He just wanders around aimlessly.
And tries shaking hands with no one.
Yeah, how many videos have we seen where he's just wandering around aimlessly after
like a lost puppy?
Yeah.
So the thing is, he has referenced many times throughout his presidency that he's supposed to do this, that he has instructions for this. He has shown notes many times in the past. He has a group of people who are managing him like he is a clueless little child being talked through every single step, because he's doing no thinking for himself. He's not a leader. A leader does not require notes like this.
Okay, so Dyer, you have prepared meetings to discuss proposals, right?
Yes.
You've probably written agendas for those meetings.
Yes.
Okay. Is the agenda usually instructions for like how to sit in a chair, or are they usually like about the topics to be covered?
What I have in there is topics that we need to be discussed, key points or objectives that we need to complete, and get timelines for, updates on previously set objectives and timelines and all that stuff. It's about critical information that I need to either pass or receive.
I mean,
from
these are notes. These are like stage instructions for an actor. These aren't meeting. This isn't about the meeting or the content of the meeting. These are instructions that you would give to an actor.
Right. I'm guessing
if you were in a play, these are the kinds of instructions that would be on the play notes.
So there's obviously no importance on what's being discussed here if the notes are purely on his presence.
Yes. So just to read it again, the notes say, offshore wind drop-by sequence of events. You enter the Roosevelt room and say hello to participants. You got to be told to say hello to the participants. You take your seat. Press enters. You give brief comment, 2 minutes. Press departs. You ask Liz Scholler, President AFL-CIO, a question. Note, Liz is joining virtually. I bet you. I mean, he'd probably be real confused if that wasn't in the notes there. You thank participants. You depart.
That didn't even include what the question was going to be.
I don't know. Maybe it's on the other side or on the inside or something. I don't know.
No, he had handwritten notes on the other side, apparently. He was actually referring to.
Well, yeah, and so I mean, don't flip it over here. Let's see here. The The New York Post also posted a funny. I guess I think that they're the Onion now, or maybe the Babylon Bee. They posted a edit for what they wished the note said. What the Post wishes Joe Biden's cue cards would say. It says, let's see, they go through it here. So on Thursday they go through like the preference. They're the premise of what they're doing here, but basically they said the press conference sequence of events: after ice cream, walk down hall to press conference, Secret Service agents, sport, chief, and stretch will escort you to you stand at podium. It is a tall wooden stand in the middle. You hold on to it for support. Greet the press. You say hello, not hey friends, ready to cover for me. You do not sniff Kate Collins' hair. A man named Ron Klain will try to rush the stage. Stretch will tackle him. You will not blame Putin or Trump. Don't whisper. Seriously, stop whispering. When someone says, Mr. President, remember, they're talking about you. We can't believe it either. Call on son of a bitch staff Peter Doocy. Don't sniff his hair. Try answering his question for once. Hold up your arm. Make a fist. Shake it all about. That's what it's all about. You will be escorted out by your wife, Jill. You did a great job. It's Delaware time. Lukewarm tomato soup and me TV.
Okay.
You say we're going to increase domestic oil production and stop spending so much government money to rein in inflation.
Oh my God. So obviously I think that his presidency is collapsing. Even his own supporters are pointing out he's at fault for what's happening here. So I'm hoping at some point in the collapse that some staffer who finally gives up will give him a note card that gives him comical instructions, because I know he will actually follow them. Like if they could tell him to say any ridiculous thing or do any ridiculous thing, he'd probably do it. He's like what's that movie with the Anchorman who did?
Anchorman. It's just called Anchorman.
Yes, that's funny. I
nailed it.
Included the name of the movie. So yeah, it'd be funny if they like someone Anchorman him, put some crazy stuff on the teleprompter, because he would read it.
All right. So as bad as Joe Biden is, this is what is waiting in the wings.
For the years, yeah.
We all sat and watched the Ketanji Brown Jackson hearings, in which she very calmly sat through what I think a lot of, particularly black women, let's just be honest, felt was brazen disrespect from senators like Lindsey Graham, senators like Tom Cotton, senators like Josh Hawley. Mm-hmm. What did you think when you watched that hearing?
I will tell you, Joy, I experienced great joy when I watched this brilliant, phenomenal black woman, jurist, be so smart and just cut through the political gamesmanship that they were attempting to incite. And she just was composed. And as far as I'm concerned, was taking a whole lot of people to school. And I watched that with incredible joy, because it was just brilliance being displayed for the entire country to see. And I cannot wait to see. That will only be matched by the joy that I experience when I see her take the oath to be the next justice on the United States Supreme Court.
Vice President Harris, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joy. It's good.
What the fuck?
So, sorry that we're not going to cover this week because it's fake news, is that Google apparently has a sentient AI, which it doesn't. Spoiler alert. But it would probably have a more convincing auto text generation than Kamala Harris does. So if you're familiar with your autocomplete or auto text on your phone, your text messages, it may predict the next word. And there's funny tweets and stuff where people just make a full tweet composing it of the next word, the predictive text word. And that's basically what Kamala Harris is. She's a predictive text generator, because your predictive text generator is never going to predict the end of the sentence. It will never predict a period. It will just keep the sentence going forever and ever and ever, and just keep adding commas and adding words and adding thesaurus words of different things that mean the same thing, like joy and intelligence and bravery and respect and chivalry, and over again. And just keep going and going and going forever, never ending the sentence with a period, like Kamala Harris does, where she just talks and rambles and just says the same thing over and over again. And just, I love her. I love her use of verbal commas, where she will say that, like, somebody is, and then she will just read like 5 or 6 words off of thesaurus.com for the attribute that she's trying to say. Like, that's how she constructs her sentences, is just by injecting as many SAT words as she possibly can. I don't even know if those are SAT words. It might be like ACT words, as she can into her sentences by just adding thesaurus words. I mean, this is like the trick that you would use at school to try to pad out your paper length, is just be more verbose in your descriptions and describe things twice in a sentence. You certainly can do that in a literary sense, but it's not efficient. It's not necessarily a sign of intelligence, but people think it is, so that's what they do.
Make food for you after I'm done.
Okay.
Love you.
Dyer has children invading his house.
Yeah. How'd they get in here?
I don't know.
Someone called the police. Anyways,
they'll be there in 14 minutes.
They'll be here in an hour and 20 minutes, and they'll probably shoot the kids. So I shouldn't call them. And my dogs. That always happens. Yeah. So she obviously is speaking like someone who didn't study or produce an actual presentation, and is having to speak in front of the classroom, and is just rambling through it with not knowing what they're going to say.
She does with Joy's name what I do with your name, where like I'll try to like unnaturally inject the word Dyer into a sentence just because I think it's funny, but like I'm doing it ironically. She was using the word joy like that unironically. She thought that she was being smart and clever. She thought she was ingratiating herself with the audience, and it was none of that.
It's horrifying
and
depressing that these
self-awareness
people are in charge of our country right now. Yes. And then by in charge, I mean they have people who are puppeteering them, but still.
And so what is Joe and Kamala doing with their mush brains and auto text generation? Well, not a whole lot for inflation. Here's Joe just outright denying that inflation even exists.
I promise. Recession's even more likely than ever.
Not the majority of them aren't saying that. Come on, don't. I promise.
Recession's even more likely than ever.
Not the majority of them aren't saying that. Come on, don't make things up, okay?
Yes, they
now
are.
You sound like a Republican politician. I'm joking. That was a joke.
All right, so inflation's a big joke. The question, if you couldn't hear it, was a lot of economists saying that we're in a recession or recession's coming. What do you say to that? And Joe Biden basically said that it's a right-wing conspiracy theory. Of course it is. Because he wants it to be. Just to give a little sense about how Joe Biden's lying here is a chart of inflation over the Joe Biden presidency. So you can see that there's a couple really important points in time outlined on this graph, and it kind of gives the whole story, doesn't it? So you've got January of 2021, Joe Biden takes office, and something happens, like the nanosecond that Joe Biden takes office. All of a sudden, inflation has this weird hockey stick that happens to it immediately. And then you've got the American Rescue Plan, which was a massive, massive spending plan on farting cows and all that kind of stuff. And you have a hockey stick that then has another hockey stick on it. It hockey sticks again. It's like a double hockey stick because we're in hell. Then it keeps going like that for quite some time. And then we get to the invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. And Joe Biden, who has been saying for the last 3 months that it's Putin's price hike, all the inflation is caused by Putin. Well, I don't know. According to this graph, it looks like Putin stopped inflation.
Yeah.
Inflation is pretty much held solid since the invasion of Ukraine. Now, what is this graph really showing you? So this is the rate of increase. So just because inflation stays at 8% month to month, that doesn't mean inflation's not moving. It's just moving at a constant rate. It's not accelerating. So also, this inflation is year over year. So why in this graph was it 8% in February and still about 8% in May? Well, because if you look at the previous year, look at how quickly it was going up during those same months earlier. If you were to compare, say, May 2022 to January 2021, if you did a little bit longer, you didn't just do a year, the inflation rate would be like 20%. The only reason why it's only 8% is because it's now being run off of already inflated numbers. The rest of the year, and the rest of the time really, the rest of the Biden administration at least, the inflation numbers year to year are now going to be comparing to the previous year of inflation. So because we had such steep inflation last year, inflation would have to be really cranking to get it up even higher this year. So
and next year they'll be comparing to this year,
exactly,
which is super high, and so those numbers will seem lower, but they're actually drastically higher. Also, I want to pull up that article if you don't mind, Fox. This is also important because he just lied. This is from the
I don't
Insider
have this article. Is it just a screenshot?
Okay.
I can try
I sent you a tweet. So. Not tweet. I mean, in chat in Skype. So the Business Insider, Market Insider, said that the U.S. will tumble into recession as inflation soars. 70% of top economists say. So yes, 70% at least of economists, the top economists, are saying that in 2023 the U.S. will be in a recession, and that is based off of a survey from the Financial Times. So
we're also probably already in a recession. So the way
I'm
recession,
getting there.
How's it feel? How's it feel to get undercut?
So now they're saying that we're going to be in a recession in 2023. But you know what a recession is, Fox?
It's something that already happened.
Okay, a recession as a term.
It's two quarters of negative GDP growth.
Correct. So last quarter. The last recorded quarter was a negative drop in GDP. And this quarter, what do you predict this quarter is?
Well, because the supply chain magically repaired itself and oil's just flowing everywhere, I think that the GDP is going to be pretty high. Because the price of energy is a direct indicator of the GDP. And because the price of energy dropped so much this month and energy was so abundant, we'll definitely have a really high GDP, right?
Fox is pretending to be stupid right now when he's saying the exact opposite of the truth. So, yes. So we know based off of the economic reality of this quarter that we're expecting a GDP drop. So this would be the second quarter. We're currently in a recession right now, is what I'm saying, and it's just not been announced yet. But we are in a recession. Yeah, it is an accelerating recession.
It can't be announced until you're already in it because it's a retroactive process to determine when a recession happens, because you have to have two quarters of recession or of negative growth before you can declare it a recession. So in theory, if we get to the end of this quarter and it's determined that we had negative GDP, then really you've been in a recession for 6 months. And then 6 months ago, we were in a recession, but nobody would have known it or been able to scientifically prove it yet.
Right. And that's just not to say like the quarters that preceded the last quarter of reduced GDP were good quarters either. Like our economy has been moving like a freight train towards recession for a while now, and it is just not been reported yet. And Biden clearly lied. There's multiple reports of these same figures that 70% of economists, the ones are being honest, is saying that the numbers we're seeing now indicate we will be in a recession soon.
I just want to reiterate again, because the math on this is a little bit hard. Some of you, I'm sure it's not, but some of you it might be. What this graph is saying is because it's using the previous year as the basis for the inflation. Last year, we already saw record inflation. So if we're just staying put at the inflation rate right now, if real inflation didn't change at all for 12 months, the inflation rate, the CPI, would actually drop down, because it would then be 8% inflation being divided by so like let's say the 8% inflation for 12 months, and next June it's 8% again. However, it's going to be divided by this year's 8%, which means it's going to be down to 1%. So if the inflation just stays where it's at, it's going to naturally look like it's going down. However, you're still in a period where you're seeing rapid inflation. It's just the numbers can't keep up with reporting it correctly. So the only reason why it's flat right now is because we caught up to the point in time when Joe Biden inflated the economy just by nature of him entering office. And it's not because any of the stuff that they're doing has worked to reduce the inflation. It's merely a trick of the formula. If you take a different length of time, the CPI is calculated by year. If you take a different length of time, or were to compare it to, say, 2019, pre-COVID, you're going to see some insane numbers. This is merely a artifact of the math. It is not indicative that your real inflation that you feel that you're actually paying for is any better. Again, if inflation stayed at 8% for 12 months from now, you're going to be paying probably about 50 to 75% more for a gallon of milk. However, the CPI will say that inflation's 1%. That's what will happen. And so Joe's going to be able to hide inflation inside his previous years of inflation. So basically, you just have to go really big the first year, and then the next year, you can go kind of big, and it looks like you didn't go big at all. So just, again, if inflation stays at 8%, if it stays at the same rate that it is now, 12 months from now, you're paying almost double for milk, but the CPI will show that inflation is only 1%. That's how the math works on this. So don't be fooled by that flat line. Though it is funny that Joe says Putin's price hike, Putin's what's causing the inflation, when all of a sudden Putin invades Ukraine, and it's the best thing that's happened to inflation since Trump.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, if you're worried about inflation, you're a racist.
We are right now?
You know, I'm just going to say this, and if I get banged for it, I don't care. There is a great deal of Americans where it is uncomfortable that they're spending more, but they are not going to go under. You know, you got to stop complaining when there's so many people who literally the inflation rate means they may only have 2 meals instead of 3. There are Americans who did extremely well in the last 2 years in the market. You still have your job. And yeah, it's costing you more for gas, but guess what? You're still going to take that holiday, that 4th of July vacation. You can still eat out. So I'm going to need you to calm down and back off, because it feeds into this fear, and then this fear feeds into people making decisions that creates the very thing that they're fearful of.
Okay, wait,
no,
one second.
I don't feel the necessity to respond to that directly. I will say, same message to Black Lives Matter. Calm down. You're feeding into fear that doesn't need to be fed into. You just need to calm down and pull yourself back a little bit. No need to get uppity. No need to get
She's
so uppity.
assuming white people are not affected by the problem because we're all rich, and that because, in her opinion, these rich white people are complaining about inflation.
Well,
that
we
it's a
were
bad thing
rich,
that
but inflation, I mean, that white privilege check just doesn't go anywhere because of the inflation now.
Okay, if she's saying that black people are more affected by inflation, then she should be more caring about addressing it. It should be more of a problem if she really thinks it's a huge problem for the black community. But she's such a fucking racist.
Isn't that
inflation's
wild?
bad for everyone?
Isn't that wild that she points out that inflation is most worst for black people?
Hey,
but
this is hurting black people, so shut up.
Yeah, like
What?
don't worry about it, Whitey. Like, well, maybe we're worried about black people too. I don't
If
like.
she
Why
just
would she?
said, "Hey, Whitey, this only is affecting black people. You're fine. Stop caring about it." Wow.
Yeah,
That's what she said.
which is actually the entire problem with the government. Is as I showed last month, there was that representative that said, "Oh well, I don't care what gas prices are because I have an electric car now." Exactly, they don't care what the prices are because it doesn't affect them because they're richer than you. The whole problem with the current government system right now is you got a bunch of rich elitists who don't care about the plights of the rest of us.
The people she's telling to shut up and back down are people who, some of them are affected by it, and yes, some of them aren't affected by it, but they care about the people who are.
So is the assumption in there that like people who are poor are just like too stupid to realize that like they're being affected by these policies, so they aren't the ones complaining?
No, the assumption in her statement is that it's okay as long as only the poor and minority groups that are suffering, and that we shouldn't complain about it.
I mean, the poors and the minorities like complaining about stuff has just been, I mean, gosh, hearing that from her after what we went through the last 2 years, good God, lady. But yeah, no, same message to Black Lives Matter. There's a lot more black people out there that are getting it worse off than you. So, you know, calm down, stop burning down cities, and you know, just calm down. You're feeding into fear that causes the problems that you're worried about. They're complaining about. Stop complaining. Come on, man. All right. So, after all this inflation and all these rich white people complaining about it, what are the goals of the Joe Biden administration? Have they changed? He entered office with some goals. Have those goals changed? Spoiler alert, they have not.
To do. Drill more here in the U.S. though.
Because we don't need to do that. What we need them to do is, with the oil that's out there, we need them to refine that oil so that the capacity could go up and then prices would go down, inherently go down.
And so I know the president once said that he was going to end fossil fuel. Is that now off the table?
No, we are going to continue to move forward with our clean energy proposal, our climate change proposal.
So the goal is still to end fossil fuel, even though gas prices are at like record highs and inflation and everything's just falling apart. We're still going to end fossil fuel.
The irony is she's saying that they just need to refine the oil. Yeah, that's the problem. We don't have enough refineries. They're running at full tilt right now, and the federal government is not willing to do anything to expand our refining capability.
Also, I mean,
domestically.
Okay, so I know that she doesn't mean this because she's not like really thinking about the words that she's saying. She's just saying anything because she's kind of like a Kamala Harris text generator. But if you take it what she said at face value, like if you take it seriously, we don't need more oil drilled. We already have a lot of oil out there. It just needs to be refined. Well, if you're not drilling for oil, where's the oil coming from? Well, it's coming from the strategic reserve, which is not a long-term plan. Eventually, that's going to run dry. Like they're basically mining for oil out of the reserves. That's not where oil is supposed to come from. That's your like savings account. You're not supposed to be spending it. All right. Now Joe Biden is not without compassion. He actually has some plans for how to reduce the gas prices. Which actually, funny enough, if you look at the gas price behind him, gas has not been $4.74 in this country for like at least a month. So your pictures are a little out of date there, which is just goes to show that why on earth would he have a gas price behind him? I mean, like who? Like I just realized this now, but like who on earth would have put a gas price behind him? I mean, it's going up so fast that picture is out of date. I mean, who thought that was a good idea?
It's just out of date like 5 minutes after they took the picture.
Yeah, like show like a gas pump. Show somebody filling their car. Why would you show the gas prices?
Some places are at $10 almost.
I will point out that funny enough, so in the movie I Am Legend from Will Smith, after a cancer vaccine turns everybody into vampire zombies. The dregs of New York, the ruins of New York that he's wandering through, one of the gas stations says that gas was $6.97, which is funny because last month in New York and in California, gas was like $7.90. So even it's Joe Biden's administration is worse for New York than a zombie vampire apocalypse.
That makes sense.
I mean, literally, a vaccine that turns you into a zombie vampire is less disastrous to the economy than Joe Biden is.
The writers of I Am Legend, actually thought, this is a ridiculous price that it could only be achieved if there was a world apocalypse. Anything higher would be ridiculous.
Joe Biden is a vampire zombie apocalypse. All right. So
He's
this
worse
is
than one.
This is Joe Biden's big plan for reducing gas prices, which if you don't say it 3 times, it doesn't work. Reducing gas prices. Reducing gas prices. Beetlejuice. Damn it.
Well, so let's be honest with one another. My message is simple. To the companies running gas stations and setting those prices at the pump, this is a time of war, global peril, Ukraine. These are not normal times. Bring down the price you are charging at the pump to reflect the cost you are paying for the product. Do it now. Do it today. Go up.
Does he think that gas stations set the price really or have a huge profit margin on gasoline?
Right, so I know you know this, Dyer, and I know a lot of you out there know this too. And maybe you know it, but maybe you don't know how to explain it. Or maybe you don't know how it works. A lot of smart people actually don't understand how supply demand works. A lot of people haven't taken economics. You very likely, if you went through regular public school, you didn't get it in your regular public grade school or high school. And if you didn't go down a business track in college, you probably didn't get it in college either. Most people do not understand how supply demand price finding works. So here's the real quick version of it, which you guys can still hear me, but I can't hear you because I just ripped my headphones out of my my ports here. So here's what's happening. What Joe said is that the oil companies, that they're charging a price higher.
He said the gas stations, not the oil companies. He messed up.
Okay. Well, taking him at what a lot of people are saying. So just let me go for this for a second, because I've heard a lot of other people talking about this who are prominent YouTubers that aren't necessarily economists or political, and they're just confused as to why the prices are so high. So let's say it costs the oil company $5 or let's say it costs them $2 to process a gallon of gasoline. Why are the gas stations now selling it for $5? Well, there's less gasoline. So if there's only 10 gallons of gasoline and it only costs $2 to refine each one of those gallons, well, then you should sell it for $2 a piece, right? Well, no, if there's a limited amount, everybody wants gas. Maybe there's demand for 20 gallons of gasoline. So Marathon's going to say, oh, well, I'll give you I'll give you $3 a gallon for those 10 gallons. I'll give you $30. And oil company says, oh, okay, that sounds good. And then BP calls up and says, no, we really need the oil too. We'll give you $3.50 for it. Oh, okay. And then Marathon goes, well, actually, we actually do want it pretty badly. We'll pay you $4 for it. And then BP says, well, we'll go for $4.50. And then Marathon says, well, all right, now let's get a little steep here. So we only want to buy 5 gallons. We'll buy it for $4.75. And then BP says, oh, great. Well, now there's only 4 gallons left. And I guess now the price is $4.75. So we'll buy 5 gallons. They bid up the price and then buy less because there's no supply. It doesn't matter if it cost Exxon Oil Company a penny to process those 10 gallons. If there's only 10 gallons, all the gas stations are going to be bidding up the price because they want the gas. If it just gets sold to the first person that asks, well, first off, you're losing money. But second off, now you've got the scenario that I just laid out. BP and Marathon both have 5 gallons of gas. It's not as much as they wanted, but they both have gas. In the other scenario, Marathon gets 10 and BP gets none. So you can either have network-wide, countrywide reduction in supply, or you can have areas that just have nothing. You can't have both. It's either areas that just have nothing, or it's places that have not as much as they want at a higher price. That's how supply and demand works. How do you fix that? How do you reduce the price? Well, you got to add more supply. You got to increase the supply to 20 gallons, 100 gallons. If BP needs 10 gallons and Marathon needs 10 gallons, but Exxon's got 1,000 gallons, well, guess what? The price can stay relatively stable. It can stay at cost of about $2 a gallon to process it, which is where gas has been for 5 years during the Trump administration. Does that make sense now? So it's
those
not
gas
that...
stations also having to pay for it too.
What's that?
The gas stations don't make a lot of profit off of selling gasoline. They selling other products where they get the money from. I just only mentioned
in that scenario, the gas station's not making hardly any profit. They're just outbidding each other. So the oil companies may be making profit, but the alternative to the oil companies making profit is just that there is no gas to buy. So the question to you is, and again, if you can somehow package what I just said to explain to your crazy aunt who thinks that the oil companies are just evil, the question before you, the option is, would you rather have a system where New York has $2 gas, but you live in Montana and they have no gas, or you have $5 gas in Montana, but there is gas available, and New York has $20 gas, but there is gas available? I think personally, and this might just be something that's not really like a hard and fast fact, but it's just a preference. I think the preference is that everybody has something, even if it's expensive. Now you have to modify your day and you have to reduce your consumption, and that's going to hurt the GDP and all this stuff. But at least there's GDP to hurt, because what hurts the GDP more? Everybody paying more for gas and everybody having gas, or only a very small number of people having gas and the rest of us having none? It's be far more damaging.
The social impact of having no gasoline in an area is far worse.
Exactly. So
Also, I want to point out that this is not the oil companies taking advantage of the situation. It is the oil companies acting rationally on the market conditions set up by the president and his administration. They are forcing a situation where the rational reaction of the market is to do what the gas stations are doing. Sorry, the gas companies are doing. And if he wants to reverse that trend, reduce the cost per gallon, it's in his capability to change the situation so that they would act rationally in the market to lower the prices by producing more.
Yes, the only way to reduce the prices in the economic situation I just laid out is to add more supply. Why are prices going up right now? Because the supply was reduced by Joe Biden's policies.
And the forecast for what supply would be produced.
We're not getting that complicated there. Yes, absolutely.
That's factored in.
Yes. All right. So, also Joe Biden here. Why is he so upset at the oil companies and the gas stations for raising the prices? Well, what's happening here is that the Democrats are projecting, because you see, the Democrat-controlled companies, especially the media, will intentionally do things to cause problems for Republican administrations. So naturally, Joe thinks that the oil companies are jacking up the prices because they want to be mean to him. Clearly, it couldn't possibly have anything to do with Joe's policies. No way. Beyond just begging the oil companies for lower prices, however, Joe Biden has also floated other ideas. One in particular was to distribute gas cards to every American, because the way to stop inflation is just to give money to people all over the place. There are a few problems with this idea, however, chiefly due to the chip shortage. It wasn't possible to print out hundreds of millions of gas cards that would be necessary to give every American $40 for gas.
So if I understand this correctly, they have damaged the supply chain so drastically they couldn't even raise inflation if they tried, and they are in fact trying.
Yes. Basically, because of that, because it's literally impossible for them to just give more money to people because of the chip shortage, Joe seems to have settled on the idea of a gas tax holiday. This would reduce your pain at the pump by about 18 cents per gallon, which is not even a full gallon of gas if you have a 15-gallon tank. It is sure to put a dent in that 18 cents reduction is sure to put a dent in the 200 cents that gas has gone up since Biden took office. Oddly enough, that's
oddly enough, on the current schedule, the proposed gas tax holiday would end in October, which is right before the midterms. So, Democrats' big plan to make sure that there is at least 20 cent spike in gas prices the month before the elections. Okay, great plan.
Yeah. So I'm going to explain why the gas holiday won't work based off what I just said. So, all right. So the reason why gas prices are high, as I just went through, is because there's not enough supply. And so the gas stations are bidding up the price of that gasoline, right? So let's say that you just lop 18 cents off the top of it. Well, because you removed the gas tax. Well, that hasn't increased the supply. All that does is mean that the gas stations now have 18 extra cents that they can bid the price back up. If you take off, so the gas tax holiday is supposed to be for 3 months. If you take 18 cents off of the price, it will just get bid back up 18 more cents within probably about a week. So you're not actually going to be reducing the price. You'll be paying 18 less cents in taxes, but you're going to be paying 18 more cents in the price that it costs the gas station to buy it from the oil company. And it's not because the oil company is charging them 18 cents more. It's because that gas station's competitor is also trying to buy the gas. That's why. The price is not set by the producer. It's not set by the oil companies. The price is actually set by the buyer. I can put my house on the market right now for $1 million. Oh my God, Fox has $1 million. Yeah, I got $1.5 million. I got $1 million, $500,000 house, $1.5 million. No one's gonna buy it. I can't set the price. I cannot set the price of my house. I can put it on the market for $10 million. It doesn't mean anyone's gonna buy it. They could put gasoline on the market for $30. No one's gonna buy it. The oil companies do not set the price of oil. They don't set the price of gas. I don't set the price of my house. The buyers do. The buyers set the price of my house. My house, when I bought it, it was $140,000. I got outbid, and now it's $160,000. And then Joe Biden's inflation made it $200,000. And I'm sure next month, when the market crashes, it'll be worth $2,000. So that's really exciting.
So when I got my house, there was 2 houses on the same block that were for sale and for roughly the same price, right? So on the first one, I bid what the asking was, and I got outbid and lost the house. So the second house, I bid because I was also asking for a few things like them covering closing. I bid over the asking price because it's a very hot market, very low supply of houses. It was very competitive. I offered to pay more than they were asking, and that's how I got the house. I actually contributed to the inflation of the price because I was showing as a buyer that I was willing to pay more, and thus that became the value of the house.
Yeah, you set the price. I mean, again, if that homeowner, so let's say house A, they put their house on the market for $200,000, and then house B was like, well, I want more than that. I want $1 million. I want $2 million. Well, that's great. They put it on the market for $2 million. You're not going to go buy that one. That's not how that works. They don't get to set the price. You, the buyer, get to set the price. So that is not how Joe Biden has a complete, and all the Democrats do, and most people do, but it's okay for most people to not understand how economics and how price finding works. That's okay. You're not setting policy, and you're not absurdly confident in your ability to set that policy and ruin the economy. The problem is that Joe Biden has the same understanding of economics as Dyer's 5-year-old does. Yet, Joe Biden's extremely confident in his ability to craft economic policy. No, that's not how that works. So, Joe Biden's wrong. The only way to fix this is supply. It's a supply problem. You need to increase the supply. And as Dyer and as John Perry Jareen something, Carrie, she also pointed out that one of the issues is refining. Once you drill the oil, you gotta refine it. And we also have a big problem with the refiner capacity right now. I think our newest refinery is 30 years old, and most of them are much, much older than that. And they're all at full capacity all the time. Now, there's some things that you could do to solve that, like outlawing special gas blends for California. However, we're not willing to do that yet either. You could also stop dumping corn into it, because that's going to ruin your engine and ruin all the refineries. All right. Well, I could go on about that forever, but we don't have time because we have to talk about another energy source, which was dead babies. No longer. Which is a reference to a story.
Great segue.
Yeah, a reference to a story from a few months ago where we found out that a DC abortion clinic was turning babies that they killed into electricity. Although they're not allowed to do that anymore. Well, actually, they are in DC. But we're going to get into that. And Dyer's going to tell us all about it because I didn't write anything for this segment.
Okay, fair enough. So, Roe v. Wade was overturned this last week, and that there was lots of rioting and gnashing of teeth and wailing in the streets from the leftists, and a lot of people on the right who are very happy about this. And I've I've been planning to do this for a while, but with the ending of Roe v. Wade, it's very timely that I need to do this in the next week. I'm doing the next Patriot Letter on addressing abortion and how, in my opinion, it is an evil that is equal to and very similar in a lot of ways to slavery in America, and that it is another example where people have given themselves a right, determined it was their right constitutionally and under law to determine whether or not someone is or is not a human, and then to profit off of their bodies and to dispose of them when they are no longer wanted or seen as being convenient. There's a very similar analogy, and I think that similar to slavery, the divide across the left and the right on this issue is insurpassable. That they're saying that it is not only okay to have an abortion, but it's okay to have an abortion up to and directly after birth, and that it can be done for simply the reason of convenience. There is no necessity for someone to have a medical need or that rape or incest. They will constantly bring up those arguments as reasons why abortion is necessary. But then you shut it down immediately by saying, well, what if there was carve-outs for incest, rape, and for medical necessity? They say, no, well, we still want abortion. It's a woman's right. No, it's not a constitutional right. At no point in the Constitution does it say that you have a right to an abortion. It's not like gun laws, where it is established in the Constitution that we have a right to defend ourselves. But however, the Constitution does say that every citizen, anyone who's born into the United States on our land or to American parents, they have the rights to the Constitution and all of the rights that we have under law. And that includes the right to live, to be free, to pursue happiness. So those babies, in fact, do have constitutional rights, as do the parents. And the thing about all law and the application of law is trying to balance the rights of all individuals to the max possible. It is not balanced to say that the parent can choose because they are sad or because they are poor or because it is inconvenient for them, that they can end the life of another. There are a lot of times where having a child in general and an older child is a financial burden that a parent has to take on, and that can bankrupt them. But that doesn't mean that your 8-year-old, who costs you money to send them to school, costs you money to feed them, costs you money to clothe them, costs them money for school materials. It doesn't mean that because they are a financial burden to you that you can kill them. And the same logic applies. No more do you have a reason to kill your 1-year-old, your 9-month-old, your 8-month-old, your just prior to being born child, because they're a burden to you. Because if a mother of an 8-year-old has mental issues, depression because of their child, it doesn't give them the right to kill that child. So it is a great moral question of our age that is equal and very similar to slavery. And I would say that history rhymes, and also history has inertia. I say that the issue of abortion and how states are saying they will not honor the federal government's determination on this law, they will not honor the sanctity of life, is very similar to how the states responded under slavery. And we have states on both sides of the issue saying that they are willing to secede over this issue, and also history. It's very simplistic in its view. We look back on the American Revolution and say the issue at hand was slavery and states' rights, but that isn't actually true. There was a lot of context and a lot of things going on during that time period. There was the southern states feeling that the northern states were not equally applying protections under the law, that they were allowing violence in the South and not punishing those who were conducting it. There was a lot of states saying that we are not being treated as equals, and then them refusing to recognize federal authority over different things or entirely. And that's what led to the secession and then the war. So we have similar issues going on. And it's not just about abortion, but abortion is the big moral question that I think that history will look back on this time that we are currently in and say that was the catalyst. It will ignore all the other context, all the other legitimate grievances, and all the other unsurpassable differences that our different states have, the different political parties have, and they'll say this was the catalyst. I think that history is going to look back in time and say that abortion was the great moral question that led to the next American Revolution. And it may not be exactly the same, obviously, because the technology and communication is very different. But I think we are already in the beginning stages of said revolution.
And I had a clip here that I want to play that kind of highlights. Obviously, there is so much of the, I guess, real-time coverage of this that we're not going to do today, like all the rioting and that sort of stuff and the death threats, the countless. Apparently, it's okay to threaten violence on Twitter again. It's threaten insurrection again. In fact, there was a funny Babylon Bee article about the January 6th hearings took a break to call for insurrection after the Supreme Court decision, which is more or less true. But I want to play this clip for you because Dyer's absolutely correct. We don't need to wait. Obviously, people that were pro-slavery were clearly on the wrong side of history, but we don't really got to wait to see that the abortion issue is on the wrong side of history either, because we have. Well, let me play this clip, and I'll go back through how we've already seen that in our own past already. This is a clip from CNN of Ana Navarro talking about the abortion case.
Is placed to protect the mother before, during, and after the child.
And I am not anybody to tell you what you need to do with your life or with your uterus. And because I have a family with a lot of special needs kids, I have a brother who's 57 and has the mental and motor skills of a 1-year-old. And I know what that means financially, emotionally, physically for a family. And I know not all families can do it. And I have a step-granddaughter who was born with Down syndrome. And you know what? It is very difficult in Florida to get services. It is not as easy as it sounds on paper. And I've got another step-grandson who is very autistic, who has autism, and it is incredible. And their mothers and people who are in that society, who are in that community, will tell you that they've considered suicide because that's how difficult it is to get help, because that's how lonely they feel, because they can't get other jobs, because they have financial issues, because the care that they're able to give their other children suffers. And so why can I be Catholic and still think this is a wrong decision? Because I'm American. I'm Catholic.
She just
listed
off
a kill
her
list.
Brother, her step-grandson, and somebody else.
Another grandson.
Even just autism? I mean,
some of you guys have autism.
Yeah, just autism is like enough to kill you, and she's talking like. I mean, it's one thing when you're talking about a theoretical.
Margaret Sanger would be proud of this woman.
Yeah. So what was I talking about before this clip? But before this clip, I said Dyer's right but we don't need to wait to find out if you're on the wrong side of history or not. Who had the idea that those that are disabled or a burden to society just must be eliminated?
Hitler, Mussolini,
yeah,
Mao.
That was Nazi policy. That was Nazi policy. That was
all of them.
Well, I mean, Nazis pioneered it. But that was a Hitler speech, basically, was that we have all of these disableds clogging up the hospitals and
someone rid me of
burden.
These troublesome disabled.
I mean, I mean, she starts off like, okay, this guy is like, he's kind of a vegetable. He has the motor skills of a 1-year-old. I mean, and just because you have some kind of motor skill disability that could be like neurological or something like that has like actually no bearing, not necessarily on like your intellect or your personality. I mean, there's plenty of people who are like severely disabled physically, but like have perfectly fine mental faculties. So like, I don't know if her 57-year-old brother, like maybe he's a genius. Maybe he's like Stephen Hawking or something like that. I mean, by her logic, Stephen Hawking should have been killed too. But just I mean, I've been thinking about what she's saying there. Like, she's referring to like real living people that are her family members, and just how tragic it is that other people won't be able to also kill their family members because of this decision. And what a tragedy it is that her brother was born, and how he should have been killed 57 years ago. How, again, so she starts off like really aggressively, somebody who's like fully physically disabled. Okay, that's a pretty aggressive disability. Then she gets into somebody who's got Down syndrome. There's a lot of people with Down syndrome who will tell you that they still live a life that is worth living. Just because you don't think it's the life worth living doesn't mean it's not. So you go from fully disabled to, Down syndrome's a rather challenging condition, to somebody who's just autistic. Even if you're really autistic. I mean, there's a lot of autistic people that are perfectly functional people, that are perfectly fun, fine people to talk to and be friends with. I'm friends with a lot of them. As Dyer said, some of you guys are. So you shared that with us. You know people who are like, autism's a really low boundary there. So she started off with like this really high burden of like, man, that's a pretty bad disability there. I mean, it does make you stop and question stuff. And then it goes to Down syndrome. Well, there's a lot of Down syndrome people. And then it just goes to like baseline autism. If you're autistic, die is what she said. This is the level that the left has. They don't have any better argument than that. Just, if you're a burden or we don't like you, we would like the right to kill you. I just can't. Yeah. So as Dyer said, as I kept saying, is you're absolutely correct. This will be seen, and really is already seen, as you're on the wrong side of history there. You are on the wrong side of declaring whether or not somebody is a person just because they aren't living in the way that you're living, or you find their life inconvenient. I mean, she wasn't even making an argument for the people that had those disabilities. She didn't make an argument that her brother was having a hard time with his disability. She didn't make an argument that her grandson wanted to die because he was autistic. No, she said, well, it's a burden to me. It's a burden to my sister. She's got a lot of bills to pay. It's really difficult to deal with that. Yeah, it is difficult to deal with that. And you know what? There's a lot of those conditions that already have a federal program for them where they are at such a level. There is a federal program designed to help those. I don't really see an issue with continuing to expand these extra conditions, these extra special conditions.
But Fox,
what?
Her argument for, we have this problem where there's not enough services available for people with these conditions. So instead of saying, I should be an activist to ensure that the services are available, she's now an activist say, let's just kill them instead. That doesn't make any sense. And I had someone I talked to recently on this topic says that, I have this friend who says that they wish they had been aborted because they hate their life. And like, okay, so first off, someone now being depressed and wanting to die because they hate their life is not a justification for why you should be killing kids before they've ever had an opportunity
we live in America where it's really easy to get guns and drugs. If they really wanted to be dead, they would be dead. They were it's not serious. There's a lot of people have been saying that, but they're clearly being unserious. And I don't mean to stomp on your point or anything like that. But
no, it's actually completely along with my point. But if you did care about that person who's may or may not actually want to end their lives, do you think it's your response is to try to help them so they aren't suicidal, or should you just go kill them?
Well, no, that's evidence that more people need to die.
So it would be wrong to kill that adult who is suicidal, right? That would be morally wrong. This is an adult who has the ability to consent and who is making a choice for themselves. That's very different from a child who cannot consent, who cannot think for themselves what to do, and cannot understand what's going on. Killing that child without is very morally different from this person and killing that person who wants to die, and that still would be considered wrong.
Yes. And I mean, yourself aside, like, if you want to die, that is not a justification for killing other people. That's called murder suicide. That is like, if you have somebody, so wanting to commit suicide is considered and is a mental health problem, right? You've got something wrong with you. So why would we use as justification for killing other people somebody who already has a mental health issue? That oh, well, this crazy person said something, so we should craft policy around that because they're correct. No, you should help that person. Whatever they're saying, you need to use that and help them feel better about themselves and not want to kill themselves.
At the core of the argument was this is a person who grew up poor, apparently, and had a rough life. And then, so if you think that being poor and having obstacles in your life that make it hard for you to be successful is justification for you being killed, would be a justification for every poor person being murdered en masse.
Yeah, I mean, so, and that's one of the issues that the left has with their arguments for abortion. It's not just about the right. When they start actually, the few times they actually get into their reasoning deeper than woman's choice, because that's what a lot of them will fall back on. But if you can get them to explain their choice more deeply, it's a real quick hop, skip, and a jump from what Ana Navarro just said to genocide, to racial cleansing.
It's what the Planned Parenthood was initially set up for. Margaret Sanger wanted it to kill the unsavory people, the poor and the non-whites.
And the response we get from the left today is, "Oh, that's an old talking point. It's not true. It's whatever." No.
It's how it's being used today.
Ana Navarro just proved that is the argument that was and still is the justification for it.
Yes. They still want to remove the population of poor people. They still want to remove populations of minority groups to reduce their population. That is still the application of Planned Parenthood. So, in the end, I think that this is going to be, like I said, the moral question. And also, I talked about the inertia of history, right? There are a lot of actions that happen on day one that the full effects of those actions aren't felt till many days or years later on. And many different actions, all that are adding weight to that direction of history. You can say in the last 10, 20 years, a lot of different things have happened, small and big, that have all pushed towards the separation, the unpassable chasm between left and right, and between conservative and Republican, and between individual states and what they believe is legitimate or not. One of them could be considered the election. One of them could be considered the separation on abortion. One could be the separation on gun rights. One could be how they were responding to left-wing or right-wing violence, or what their opinion on Jan 6 was. These many different things, words said, action, and deeds done, all add weight towards a direction of a schism in our country. And the all that weight that's added on, it's like a large boat. For you to start taking actions to undo the damage to our society, it would take a very long time and a concerted effort to turn that boat around. And in that time, the boat would have continued traveling in that undesirable direction and probably hit the shore and crash on the rocks. Our country is moving towards a revolution and towards a civil war. And if we start turning today, it might already be past the point of no return where the ship will slide into the rocks regardless.
And to that point, I've heard the counterpoint of that's cool. I don't really care about this decision because there's so much other bad things going on right now. And I can definitely empathize with that position. Roe's been in place for 50 years, and we fought good and hard for 50 years to get rid of it, and finally it's gone. Well, what else did we do during that 50 years? Totally destroyed society. We've destroyed the economy multiple times in the last 50 years. We've destroyed the fabric of the family. We've destroyed financial and educational institutions. We've just destroyed community institutions. We've pretty much crumbled society to dust. But thank God we finally saved the babies. Great job. Maybe we could have walked and chewed gum at the same time. So this is a great decision. It's good. It's moral. It's exciting. However, the people who say that there's a lot of other stuff going on right now, They're correct too. And goddamn, the Republicans have got to get their ass in gear. And based off the legislation they just passed last week, I don't think that they're going to do it. And you know, I can't help but feel that the children that were born on Friday because their parents couldn't get abortions or their mother couldn't get an abortion for them, you know, they will gladly, huh?
I mean, the states that were already supporting abortion were still supporting abortion after Roe v. Wade was gone. So like,
there are because of those trigger laws. Because of the trigger laws, there were actually abortions that were scheduled on Friday that didn't occur. No, there are kids that maybe weren't born on Friday but were scheduled to be aborted on Friday that will go on to grow up and live.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, no, there is, because I think Missouri, the decision came out around 10 a.m. Eastern, and Missouri's trigger law kicked in like 10:30 Eastern. Like it was like they were like, yeah, done, go. So like there are children that will be born in Missouri who were scheduled to be aborted on Friday that weren't. But I can't help but thinking that when they turn 18, they're going to be wandering through the federal wasteland in Fallout World with a pipe pistol and a mole rat, because that is what we have done during the last 50 years. Great job on finally getting to where we needed to get with this issue in the Supreme Court. But Jesus Christ, have we let the country just die in that time? And so I get why some people don't care about this anymore. I can empathize with that position because we have a lot of work. We have a lot of work to do because, again, those kids that will go on to grow up, I just can't help but feel that the ship is headed towards the rocks at such a speed that their growing up will take place in Fallout World.
Yep. Also, we have the statement from the Pentagon, which floored me and is going to lead to me having to do some homework tomorrow morning.
Yeah, do you want me to try and find that and pull that up?
If you wouldn't mind pulling up, I'll give them a little cue on it, though. Basically, the Pentagon came out saying that they would not be honoring or
not just the Pentagon. That person has a name.
He is speaking on behalf of the entire military, but yeah, it was Lloyd Austin, right?
Yes.
So Lloyd Austin speaking in the capacity of his position and for the military, he's the one who makes policy for the military. He's Secretary of Defense, right? Saying that the military will not honor or see as legitimate any limitations on abortion. And that's interesting because the military in its entirety is run by, like, following the laws and regulations set up by government. So we exist. The fact that we continue to have a standing military is because of a continuation of an unconstitutional law. And the fact that we have a budget is one that's being ratified every year, or at least giving a continuation to the previous ratified budget. The number of troops is determined by Congress. The number of squadrons, of battalions established by Congress, maintained by the continuing resolutions or laws, saying that we can continue to have this status of forces. So everything that we do as far as punishment, law and order, what we are permitted to do or not do is established by law. We cannot go against the set law of the country. So for this entity that is completely dependent on following the letter of the law, then being told that, or then responding that we are going to choose not to follow some laws, is baffling. Within the military, if you are stationed in a state that allows drinking at a lower age, you are allowed to drink at a lower age. If you live in a state that has a higher drinking age, you can be, even though the military would be okay with you at a different base, you have to follow the local laws. That's because we are an organization completely based on the laws of the state and federal government that we have to follow. So it is actually a crime for Lloyd Austin to give the order to not follow a federal law or state law for the individuals within said state. And that what he's giving is an unlawful order, and if followed by anyone in the chain of command on the way down, would again be against the law. Now, what he could do within the law, if he hadn't made that statement, is he could say, if there's a sailor, soldier, or Marine, or airman that wants to get an abortion, they can go to a state where it's legal. But that's not what he said. What did he actually say, Fox?
Here is what Lloyd Austin said. Quote, nothing is more important to me or to this department than the health and well-being of our service members, the civilian workforce, and DoD families. Lloyd Austin said, I am committed to taking care of our people and ensuring the readiness of our resilience of our force, because, pregnant women would be a detriment to that resilience. The department is examining this decision closely and evaluating our policies to ensure that we continue to provide seamless access to reproductive health care as is permitted by federal law. So according to Politico, the Department of Defense does not yet have, quote, any policy to announce for accommodating female service members stationed in states that have outlawed abortions.
It's not the statement we're looking for.
Which one? I don't know.
Do we not? Okay, so court decisions will not be recognized. That's the one right there.
Where at?
Will not be recognized. Top. Acted as Supreme Court decision will not be recognized.
Let's see if I can find this Politico article, because I don't necessarily want to run off the editorialization of breaking news. Go ahead and talk while I look at this.
All right. So the only legal way is if he were to do it the way I said, where he can allow military personnel to get abortions by going to the states that allow it. That would be following the law.
So from Politico, after Roe's fall, the Pentagon has no answers for female service members. Let's see if I can skip around here. So let me see if we can find Lloyd Austin. Let's see here. Both those rules are up to individual service. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's office is taking the lead on formulating new policies for how female service members, well, that's sexist. How female service members stationed in states that have outlawed abortion or can't transfer elsewhere to receive the procedure, two defense officials told Politico. Let's see here. No one wants a repeat of the last 2 years of service-by-service COVID policies. Let's see here. Austin said, quote, nothing is more important to me or to this department than the health and well-being of our service members, the civilian workforce, and DoD families. Let's see here. We already read that. Yeah, basically just, let's see here. This is...
Trump's saying that he thinks that the phrase that the editorialization came from was, there is seamless reproductive health, meaning that they're going to... That was translated to say we will not recognize. So if that's the statement, then he did not break the law. So I guess we just fell for fake news on the editorialization.
That's what we're reading through this. I mean,
yeah.
Not that if we fell for it, we would have just reported it as is. We're reading through it. Let's see here.
If he's just trying to say that he's going to allow for TDY, temporary duty locations, to go and get abortions, that is following the letter of the law, because in the military we are citizens of every state, so it makes sense to allow us to go to the state to get certain services. For instance, I'm still a citizen of not the state I'm working in.
It is interesting that Austin's quote, though, is that he's committed to the readiness of the military. That implies that being pregnant is not conducive to military readiness. However, he has also overseen the introduction of maternity flight suits for the Air Force. So you can either, the military, Lloyd Austin, you can either continue to support abortions for your female service members, or you can have maternity flight suits. You cannot have both.
I
gotta put my foot down somewhere. You can't have both.
I have seen a lot of troops, female troops, who are not able to deploy because of the reality of their family situation, where they either are about to have a baby, they've just had a baby, or the baby is so young that they cannot actually deploy. That is a problem.
Well, I mean...
And it seems like there was a change to a policy a while back where they made it so that certain frontline military jobs could now be filled by women that may actually be filling a position that they cannot actually fulfill because of their life's reality.
Yeah, and I mean, there's plenty of military positions that don't necessarily require frontline deployments.
A lot, majority actually.
Yeah, and there's a lot of civilian work to be done for the military. Yeah.
I don't think that having a person in finance, or a person who works at the gym, or the person who works at making the food, or the person who's doing flight records, or the person who's doing a lot of maintenance jobs, you don't have to deploy in a lot of those jobs, and they get to be done by a female, it'd be no problem. But once you get to a position where you are a frontline combat troop, but you are undeployable, first off, it hurts your career. You could have gone to a better job that wouldn't be harmed by you being unable to do your job, but also hurts the military because you're filling a spot that someone else could be there.
Yeah. So see if I can get this picture opened here. I think that works.
The time of the Fourth Amendment prejudices.
Yeah. So let me see here. Okay. So this was interesting. So this was from the dissenting, which I don't think I'm gonna get the picture up, but the dissenting opinion, which maybe I can. Hold on a second here. Yeah, I can. There we go. So the dissenting opinion actually had this interesting excerpt, which really has nothing to do with the case at hand. But basically, they were upset at the way the majority read the 14th Amendment, and basically they have, in this abortion case, we not only got an end of Roe v. Wade, but we also have the beginnings of a framework for the constitutional right to time travel. So this was from the dissent, which also, mind you, this is what they typed. I'm not read it as I'm reading it. So it says next that abortion is nothing new. So apparently the 14th Amendment might provide protection for things wholly unknown in the 19th century. Maybe one day there could be a constitutional protection for, time travel. But as to anything that was known back then, such as abortion or contraception, no such luck. First off, that is very flippant for a Supreme Court document. But also, I fully agree that the 14th Amendment has within it a protection for the private use of time travel. So, thank you, Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade will go down in history, not just for its ending of abortion, but also for its introduction of the right to time travel.
Okay, so let's say hypothetically they create time travel technology, right?
Yes, I have the right to privately use it.
I'm getting there. I think that the precedent with abortion having never been a right in the Constitution is because technology has progressed. It didn't become a right because we discovered abortion. It didn't become a new constitutional right. It still has to be part of the Constitution. So abortion, for it to become a constitutional right, would have to then be added to the Constitution.
Yeah, are they suggesting that we didn't have the technology to murder babies in the 19th century?
That's why I laughed when I said it, okay?
Now here's a question, Dyer.
You get my point, though, right?
Yes.
So
now,
if time travel becomes technology, it would not just be a constitutional right. You'd have to add it to the Constitution. So no, you don't have the constitutional right to time travel yet.
Well, no, because the First Amendment protects new forms of the same thing. Oh, well, I guess there's no form of time travel. Well, there is forward time travel. You do have the right to that. Technically, babies now have the right to forward time travel because they can live. The question would be, so if the 14th Amendment might provide a right to privately time travel, does it also have in it the right to privately time travel back in time to unabort all the babies?
Well, right now, the right to time travel, it goes back to the states, just like with abortion.
As it should.
Because anything not enumerated in the Constitution goes back to the states to regulate.
So if you have someone in your life that's bored or doesn't care or thinks that we have bigger problems, just inform them that, maybe you don't care about the babies, but gosh, time travel. You could time travel now. That's at least the beginnings of a framework. There's no precedent in Supreme Court law that the 14th Amendment might protect time travel.
So this is actually part of this is in a document that's going to live for probably the rest of our country.
Well, apparently in infamy. So interestingly enough is that Nancy Pelosi invoked a day that will live in infamy, the day that we the name that we gave to Pearl Harbor as the same thing as not.
More people died from abortions than in Pearl Harbor.
You know what's interesting? So I did notice this, and I didn't go collect all of them, but I'm sure everybody's seen them. There's been a lot of tweets and statements by the Democrats invoking death. Eric Swalwell tweeted out that this is going to kill people. There's going to be blood on the hands of the Supreme Court because people will die. And I find it interesting that the left is for some reason they think it's a compelling argument to invoke death and the protection of life when literally like that the right already has that position staked out, that like you're killing people, you're killing babies that are people. And the left's response is, I know you are, but what am I? You're killing people. Like, no, we're not. There's not, no. You can't just turn it around on that. So like, I guess if you want to look at the logic of it, or the statistics on it, is like, abortions, well, I guess not 100% of the time, but like 99% of the time, abortion is successful in killing the baby, whereas like a pregnancy is like, maybe 1% of the time, or way less maternal.
Well, I'd say to ban abortion for convenience, still have it as being an option for a mother who's going to die from childbirth.
Yes. Well, and so there's also, one of the other interesting things is Nancy, and I can't believe nobody's really picked up on this before. I think it was Crowder that pointed it out, was the language of between a woman and her doctor. Abortions aren't carried out by doctors. They're not carried out in hospitals. Usually, always, you're never going to go to a hospital and get an abortion. You're going to get an abortion at a clinic. The clinic, the person performing the abortion is not necessarily a doctor. They may be something that's equivalent to a nurse practitioner. So it's really, and these are typically not going to be your family doctors. So between a woman and her doctor, I mean, these are people that you don't know, that the woman doesn't really have a pre-existing relationship with. The way the left has tried to evoke that imagery is these are like, your family doctor down the street that, your dad grew up with or something like that. He's known your family for years. That's not who's giving you an abortion. You're not getting abortions in hospitals. Now, as Dyer pointed out, and as other people pointed out, there are situations where there's miscarriages or complications, and during that, the baby may die. However, the CDC, by the CDC's own definition, and by just really a logical definition, when the baby dies as a result of a problem with the pregnancy, a complication in a procedure, that's not an abortion. It is a death. It's died unintentionally. An abortion, by the CDC's own definition, is the intentional ending of the pregnancy. And the pregnancy ends by accident because there's some kind of complication. That's not an abortion. And so there's a lot of, I guess, are women just going to die now? Are they just going to be turned away from the hospital and die? No, they're not going to be turned away from the hospital and die. The hospital will make an attempt to remove the baby if that's what is necessary. And if the baby dies during that procedure, it'll be a tragedy. It won't be an abortion, though. It'll just be, lots of people die on the operating table every day. As gruesome as that sounds. But it's not murder. It's an accident.
They always default to protecting the mother's life first.
Yes. So that there's things like that will be carved out in laws. And from the laws that we've seen so far, the Texas one, and I believe the Mississippi one, and the I'm not sure about the Missouri one. I'm not really sure what all that one says. There does appear to be understanding and carve-outs for that make sure that these things are not being outlawed. Even if they did outlaw it, well, you can't outlaw life-saving procedures. And as I just said, the CDC does not consider a baby that dies as a result of a pregnancy complication an abortion. And you shouldn't either, because it's not what it is. That's just obvious. But so any life-saving care given to a woman at a hospital, that's not going to be an abortion.
Correct. So I think there's a lot more we could say about this. I want to, again, spend more time refining the actual statement and putting it into another one of our Patriot letters to mail off to Congress, to members of Congress, and also the media, because this is an important topic that I think I would like to have our official statement on, and to take a note at this point in time, and we'll see how right we are or not, because I think we're going to see the ramifications that we've discussed in our lifetime.
Yeah. So this basically also just sends it back to the states. So this doesn't outlaw abortion.
California's still going to have abortion. New York's still going to have abortion.
I actually think this could be good for the purple leak blue leaks that the blue states seem to have, where they're purpling all the conservative states. If you can get your state to have stricter abortion control, you're going to have a lot less leftists leaking into your state. You've got Californians flooding out, scurrying out in a mass exodus of their policies. We had 2 weeks ago, I just went over that woman who she voted for liberalizing jail reform, and then she got run over. Her 8-month-old got run over by a person who was let out on bail, and now she's leaving the state. You've got millions of leftists that are doing the same thing. They voted for a policy, then they got whacked on the head by that policy, and they're coming to your state to vote for that policy again because they're idiots. If your state will not allow them to have an abortion, they might be less
They're threatening
inclined.
to leave. I say do it.
Yeah, they might be less inclined to, which I heard one of the most tragic losses brought to us by Michael Knowles is that Pokimane has vowed to move to California, or to Canada. I repeat myself though. She has vowed to move to Canada, which
That's
is
a person?
Yes, Pokimane's a person. Yeah. I guess if you like watching big boobs on Twitch, it's like a thing. Maybe I shouldn't.
I watch her though.
Yeah, dude. You love your wife.
I'm a big fan of big boobs. Don't get me wrong. I'm feeling just like a test of my boob knowledge. No, so the great thing is this is going to cause or encourage a lot of people, Democrats in Republican states, to leave, and a lot of Democrats who are in Democrat states to stay.
Now, is that going to increase polarization? You betcha.
Yes.
You betcha
Yes,
it's going to increase. What's the alternative? What's the alternative to polarization? It's that you get railroaded. You're going to get called out on your red flags. You're going to have your guns taken away. You're going to have, if you knock some girl up, she's going to kill your kid. You're going to have to live under the boot of Democrats, of authoritarians. The alternative is polarization. Everyone wants to treat polarization as this dirty word. Not when the alternative is that. So
Fox, polarization is a problem, a symptom of what's going on in our country. But because, like I told you, the inertia of a history, this is actually what we prefer. It's in this current situation, with the way the world is going, yes, we would prefer the polarization to not. But it would have been better in the first place for there not to have been polarization and not a cause for polarization in the first place, right? So yes, polarizing our country is going to push us towards these states feeling they are no longer well served by the union, right? But it's better for us. It's the most rational thing to want, because the alternative is us living under the boot of the Democrats.
Yeah. And, to the extent that people are going to say, well, this is going to fracture the union.
Already fractured.
Yeah, this is not a cause of the union being fractured. This is an effect of the union already being fractured.
Symptom.
Yes, all of the things that we're seeing, they're already fractured. This is just highlighting it. And again, what is the alternative? Would you rather have a fractured union that may have to reform itself quickly, I'll say, at a certain point in the near future, or would you rather have the slow, methodic crumbling of your rights until maybe not even you, maybe your kids though, will have to live under the Democrat authoritarianism? Would you rather Would you rather have that of the slow, steady creep, or would you rather have a quick fracture and perhaps a rapid reform with fire?
White Lion said he wants to. He doesn't call it polarization. He calls it separating the wheat from the chaff and then burning the chaff. Whoosh. Okay. Yep.
All right. Well.
Anyways,
that was
thanks
interesting.
for tonight.
Yeah, that was a long stream. I think we did a good job though.
Yep. I thank you all for being involved and having the comments and watching us for this long. I think we have a good number of viewers. And these are some very important topics. I'm sure we'll be readdressing them more later on. But thank you guys. We'll see you guys next show, next Sunday. Direwolf out.
Will we see them next Sunday? 4th of July. 4th of July, you got anything going on? We will see you sometime.
Oh, yeah, there's some stuff planned for the 4th of July.
Yeah, we may go We'll probably stream sometime that weekend, but it might be slightly different.
What day is the 4th?
I think it's Monday.
Okay, so we should be good to do it on the weekend as long as it's not the actual day. I know there are some actual 4th of July events I'm probably going to be gilded and going to.
I think I've got something on Saturday, so I think Sunday still is the best day for me, but we'll...
I like to avoid people in general on the 4th, because then no one can thank me for my service.
You can be thankful for Dyer's service, just don't tell him.
Yes, just do it quietly.
Yes, silence is reference. All right, guys. Well, thank you for hanging out with us. Have a good weekend, and like I said, tomorrow, gun rights. You go hit your congressman about gun rights is the new Roe v. Wade. Hit it.
Thank you, White Lion. Direwolf out.
Peace. Signing off.